The Peltzer family invite a cute little creature into their home for Christmas, but disobey the strict rules of maintenance, resulting in murderous monsters running amok in the small town of Kingston Falls. Gremlins broke the tradition of the family Christmas movie. Joe Dante's creature feature replaced sentiment with skepticism in a film that was huge at the box office and has been a Christmas favourite ever since. My name is Luke, and I'm here with Matt.
Hey gang, it's been a rough night for Rockin' Ricky, but he's still on the air.
Nice.
And Westy.
Rand Peltzer. Fantastic ideas for a fantastic world.
All the right movies have been through the pupil stage and are emerging from our cocoons to create podcasting havoc as we bring you the story of Gremlins. Hello, Merry Christmas, and welcome to All the Right Movies, a podcast on classic and hit films that make the illogical logical. We hope, like us here, that you're all in the festive spirit. Today on the show, we're talking about the disgustingly hilarious Gremlins. Before we do, though, it's that time in the show where we talk about Patreon. We talk about it a lot because the content that we're creating on there, it's dynamite.
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt.
Oh, it's fantastic.
It's not a Peltzer invention. It's much better.
Better than that.
They actually work.
Yeah.
For those of you who aren't signed up, you're really missing out. We create 3 new podcasts per month. Our most recent one is on Scarlett Johansson and Lost in Translation. I mean, how can you say no to that, right?
Oh, lovely.
Absolutely.
You also get access to our podcast archive, as only the most recent 20 classic podcasts are available on general release. The rest are tucked away nicely for our patrons only. Surely now is the perfect time of the year to get that special someone in your life a gift that keeps on giving. The gift of all the right movies.
Oh, very nice.
Oh,
Sell tea to the Chinese. Amazing.
Go to patreon.com/all the right movies to sign up. Back to the show. Westy, why do you want to talk about Gremlins?
Ooh, Gremlins. Because it's just an amazingly huge ball of fun, isn't it? It's got so much charm.
Yeah.
It's got so much wit. It's like Spielberg and he's like gang of mates taking over. It's like the nerds are taking over and they're making something that's just going to make them incredibly happy. There's nothing quite like it. It just kind of sits there. This collection of great minds coming together. I mean, the writing's fantastic, the direction's fantastic, the cinematography's great, the creature work's unbelievable. You know, it still holds up and it's still great fun. And, you know, I cannot wait to show it to my kids. Although I did watch it again yesterday. I've watched it a couple of times this week in preparation for this, and I don't know whether I'm going to let them watch it or not.
No.
Because it is, like, watching it again, it's pretty ridiculous, but like, it's
really
loads
is.
and loads of fun.
It is. What about you, Matt?
It's the first Christmas film I remember as a kid wanting to rewatch over and over again.
Right, really?
Yeah, and even to the point where, as a kid, I didn't care if it was Christmas or not. It could be like a baking hot day in August. I'd be like, "Oh, Mum, can I put Gremlins on? Want to watch Gremlins?"
No,
because
No, you're 6.
no, take that jumper off. God's sake. But because as a kid, it's just everything you want in a film. It's really funny, it's really scary, it's really entertaining, it's got these little monsters running about. And over the years, it's actually become quite a personal film for me. Like me with my son, it's become the film we always watch on Christmas Eve. So that's our tradition.
Right.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah. So I introduced him to when he was about 7, so probably too young. But over the years, it's our Christmas Eve tradition. We're going to sit down and we're going to watch Gremlins. And last year we were lucky enough to see it on the big screen. It'd been re-released at the cinemas.
Oh, yes.
Seeing it on the big screen was absolutely brilliant. It was fantastic. And there's a lot of Christmas films that I can skip watching year in, year out. But Gremlins isn't one of them. It's on the top of the list. And knowing that in a few weeks' time I'm going to get to watch it again, it's already making me feel really festive.
Lovely.
Oh, very nice.
Very nice. Well, I remember the film from a very young age, maybe even at the time of its release. At home we had it on VHS, and it was on the same tape as Ghostbusters.
Lovely.
So bang, bang.
Oh, amazing.
As it was released as well.
Yeah. I remember avoiding Ghostbusters because it had the word ghost in, and I was scared of those things, so I opted for Gremlins instead. And I remember it starting loving Gizmo, but obviously as soon as those Gremlins came on, I was straight out of there. I didn't like that at all. But I did watch it a little bit when I got a bit older, but I couldn't really remember it, and then I watched it in my early 20s, and I was really surprised at how good it was then, and how good it really still is. It's really, really funny, pulls no punches. I really love its like dark themes, and it's not what you would expect from like a straightforward family Christmas film.
No.
It's got loads going for it. I absolutely love it.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely.
Gremlins was produced by Michael Fennell, distributed by Warner Brothers, and released on the 8th of June 1984. Filmed mainly at Burbank Studios in California, it was written by Chris Columbus and directed by Joe Dante. It stars Zach Galligan, Phoebe Cates, Hoyt Axton, Francis Lee McCain, and Dick Miller.
The beginning.
Straight into it, we open in a particularly stagey-looking Chinatown where inventor Rand Peltzer is hitting the shops, trying to move a little merchandise. We're covering this and the introduction of the idyllic small town of Kingston Falls. So, Matt, the opening to the film, what do you think?
Oh, I love it. I think it's such a great opening. I particularly love how, like, the beginning of the opening then contrasts with how it ends. Because the first bit in Chinatown, it's like a 40s film noir, isn't it?
Yeah, it
is.
is.
You know, you got Rand, he's in his fedora and his trench coat, you got the steam kind of coming off the street.
Yeah.
You've got a sailor walking past, and, I mean, he looks like, I mean, I don't know what sailors were wearing, generally speaking, in the 80s, but he does like he's just stepped out of the 40s.
Yeah.
Yeah, he does.
From that voiceover, straight away, that just pulls you into the story. You know,
Yeah.
he's got the perfect voice. And then once you're into, like, Mr. Wing's little shop, you know, I just love all the kind of nooks and crannies in there. There could be anything, like, hiding in the shadows.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, but I like how Dante doesn't, like, show you too much of it. He kind of leaves it up to your imagination. Same as when you can hear, like, Gizmo burbling away in the background before, like, Rand clocks it and goes to look at him. And that shot where he lifts the cover up off the cage and he's just looking at it and it's his face in amazement. That's brilliant, that.
Yeah,
Because-
lovely touch.
Yeah, because obviously it's not something hideous because he's not scared, but you just think, well, what's he seeing? What's he looking at? It's great. And then to come out of that, you go back into that voiceover, this time with the kid, giving you the warnings. It just leaves you kind of like very unsure almost where this film is going to go. Because on one hand, it's you've got like this sense of wonder and amazement, but it's also quite ominous as well.
Do you feel as though that voiceover by the kid must have been inserted in post? It feels as though they've shot it and then thought, shit, we didn't get any coverage of that. And it sounds like another kid doing the voiceover and not the one in the scene for me. And it feels as though it's like hastily put together. Do you not get that vibe?
I've never thought it's a different kid, but it could definitely be a case of it's kind of patching it together. Maybe throw, you know what, we didn't explain the 3 rules quickly enough.
Yeah,
You know?
Yeah.
But it just feels as though it's just shoehorned in a little bit.
I get
Right.
that impression from the entire film, to be honest. there's lots of things that don't really make any sense, which we'll touch on as we go through it, but I would definitely say that Spielberg will be watching a cut going, we need a kid voice over here.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And then from that, bam, straight into Darlene Love. Absolutely love that bit. And
Guaranteed to put a smile on your face.
Oh, absolutely. And the timing that they have the title come on, it's when it comes on, when she's singing Christmas. So in my head, I always go, Gremlins, like along with the song, because the time is absolutely perfect. That's surely got to be intentional.
Christ, that's going to be in my head forever. Every Christmas now I'll put that song on.
What did you do that for?
Yeah, sorry, I ruined the song for you now, haven't I? But it's fantastic, and it's that contrast I was talking about, because Kingston Falls just looks like such a great place to be to spend Christmas. That's proper snow, proper crunchy snow. You just want to run about in. And I love how that the song goes from being like non-diegetic to diegetic, so it's on the soundtrack, and then it's coming through Billy's car radio.
Yeah,
Love it.
yeah.
Lovely touch.
Yeah, so the whole opening, it's fantastic.
Yeah, I do love the opening. There's so many influences in this film from a lot of other films that you can tell, and it's got Spielberg all over this. And I don't quite know where he draws the line with it's a Joe Dante film or it's a Steven Spielberg film. It's very, very mixed, and it's very much in the middle, and they are having loads of fun. I mean, this reminds me of Blade Runner straight away, and it reminds me of Chinatown straight
Brilliant.
away. It's got even that voiceover, which was from like the theatrical cut of Blade Runner, that it seems it's got that vibe, and then when he's walking away and the rules are over the top and it's in slow motion, that's brilliant as well. But
brilliant.
It's a really choppy slow motion. I think the bathroom buddy is one of the best and worst things I've ever seen. And his reasoning for using it is absolutely outrageous. You're going somewhere. Oh, you've forgotten to clean your teeth. Oh, you've forgotten to have a shave. It's fucking amazing. He's never going to sell that. What a guy.
You're going to the big meeting. You've forgotten to shave.
Yeah. And then there's the little bits where he's like, you've got dragon breath. And then there's a gong on the soundtrack.
Ridiculous. That's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous, but I do love it.
Bad breath.
Yeah. It's changed his mind. Oh, that was culturally incorrect. She looks at the dragon and then a dong goes off. Yeah. It's brilliant. There's people behind the scenes here with putting in lots and lots and lots of little bits just to kind of entertain themselves. And if you look at the levels of this film, there's lots and lots of rewards. And I love Kingston Falls, but when I see it, it's just Back to the Future for me.
Yeah.
It's the same. It's pretty much the same set, isn't it?
It is it was the same set as
It
Back to the
mirrors,
Future.
it's Bedford Falls as well. It's got that vibe.
Oh yeah, the massive It's a Wonderful Life vibes, isn't it?
You've got the Beatles there, which I'm going to go into these as I go through, but I think there's a lot of Shining elements in this.
Okay.
I think that's the first one for me.
Right.
That's the one that's crashed under the lorry in The Shining, so that's the Red Beetle.
Right.
And then the cinema's got A Boy's Life and Watch the Stars, which were the working titles for Close Encounters of the Third Kind and E.T.
Yeah.
So that, again, is a little nod to Spielberg. And I think Joe Dante said he put that in there just so when Spielberg watched the dailies, he would be impressed and just say, oh, yeah, I like this. This is great. Kissing his arse a little bit.
I love it when Kate says that's where everybody's dad proposed to their mom, reinforcing this really small town America thing.
And everyone knows everyone.
Yeah, great. And Mrs. Deagle, she's
pain in the arse.
Horrible.
Oh, vile.
She's like the Wicked Witch of the West.
And Ebenezer Scrooge mixed together.
Yeah.
Piece of
and
shit.
Mr. Potter.
And Mr. Potter. Yeah, she's everything that you hate about everyone.
She's an absolute monster. She's talking about catching the dog and giving him a slow, painful death.
Horrible.
Barge into the front of the queue. She says, I'm going to put him in my spin dryer on high heat. And the guy right next to her at the counter says, that'd do it all right.
Yeah, no. Yeah, all right, mate. Put out.
Really well.
Brilliant. But going back to the Chinatown for a second, I absolutely love Rand Peltzer. He's fantastic. Just really lovable, a ball of personality, always upbeat no matter how shit his inventions are.
Yeah.
The guy who played him is called Hoyt Axton. Mm-hmm. He's probably best known as like a country singer in the 60s. He would croon away to the cast and crew in between takes.
Oh, lovely.
Great guy.
Yeah.
Totally believe it as well. He totally gives off that vibe.
He does. He's brilliant. I really love that scene where he's in the gas station and he's selling that smokeless ashtray later on in the film, and it cuts away and then cuts back to him coming out the door like billows of smoke following him out. Don't worry about that smoker, that's guaranteed.
Didn't he write Joy to the World?
Yeah, he did.
He is, isn't that? He's that kind of guy, isn't he?
Yeah.
Lovely, lovely man. Big, cuddly moron.
Yeah, he is. Well, I've got so many questions immediately in this opening. Like, what's he doing in the bowels of Chinatown in New York? Why is he going to this shop? Why isn't he asking questions when he sees the Mogwai?
Yeah.
Without saying, this is not of this earth. What the fuck is it?
Yeah.
And why does he want it instantly without saying, is it dangerous? Does it bite?
Every single scene in this film needs to be taken a little bit more seriously because it escalates very, very quickly through stupidity.
Yeah,
but that makes it so engaging, doesn't it?
Pure stupidity.
Hoyt Axton, he's just so like warm and welcoming and reassuring.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's like Father Christmas, basically, isn't he?
He is, yeah.
And he's singing when he comes in. He's just fantastic. Yeah. Let's stop talking about that. He's home. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. But it's really because I just don't think you get that many kind of families in like cinema who clearly just have that much affection for each other. Mm-hmm. Like, you contrast them to the McFlys, there's like a little bit of tension there. This family obviously really, really get on with each other, and I think a lot of that comes from Axton. And apparently he improvised most of his lines. Nice. Like, he had the rough kind of script, but he just improvised most of them. I think that's why he's so kind of like relaxed throughout the whole film, because he's just like putting his own personality into it. But having said that, as lovely as he is, he's also an idiot, to be fair, isn't he?
Well, yeah.
I mean, selling all this crap. You've kind of mentioned Luke, but what always like strikes me, he never asks about these 3 rules.
No,
like he's already been told.
Yeah, whatever, kid.
Yeah, I mean, he's been told, right, you break this one, it's going to die. So why just think, fucking hell, what happens when I break the other two?
Yeah.
And he says, I'm not going to saunter off, through Chinatown.
Don't feed him after midnight. Midnight here, midnight where I live, midnight in China, what?
Yeah, exactly. He's an absolute moron, and by the end of the film, he should tell himself, look, he's not, facing some serious jail time.
No carnage, absolute destruction.
Manslaughter, probably. Yeah, he's an absolute idiot.
Just says he's really sorry about it.
Yeah.
It's all right. We'll let him off a side accent.
Yeah, it's fine.
And he offers an appeasement in the form of a smokeless ashtray. The role of Rand Pelter, that was initially going to go to Pat Hingle, who plays Commissioner Gordon in the original run of Batman films.
Yeah.
He's screen tested, but didn't get the gig because he was too good.
Yeah.
That's a piss out, isn't it?
Dante said that his performance would dominate the whole film. I'd love to see that screen test.
Yeah. He said he played it like a failing inventor who was letting his family down, and he was kind of tortured by it, and it's like this psychological torment. That's brilliant.
Too much for this film.
Yeah, far too much.
Dial it down a bit.
The guy who plays Mr. Wing, the shop proprietor, he's called K. Luke. He was 79 years old during filming, but had to be made up to look older because he had this beautiful, youthful complexion, apparently.
Yeah,
glorious face.
Yeah.
Zach Gilligan, who plays Billy, asked him what his secret was. He was expecting some kind of mythical, ancient secret passed down from the forefathers or something like that. And Luke just said, no fried food.
Well, I'm fucked then.
He wasn't the only person in the frame for Wing either. Japanese-American actor Mako was considered, and so was John Pertwee, known for his role as Doctor Who and as Wurzel Gummidge. Yeah.
Sean Pertwee's dad. Amazing.
It's ridiculous. Spielberg also considered him for the role of Henry Sr. in Last Crusade
Yeah,
as
he
well.
did. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I don't know what kind of work he's done which makes Spielberg think he's the guy for everything.
Just loves him in Doctor Who, obviously.
2 rules. He's the guy for everything. He didn't cast him as Indiana Jones.
Was he on the list for Oscar Schindler?
Following the opening, Billy is given Gizmo as an early Christmas gift, and we get to understand more about the Peltzer family dynamic. We're going to focus our attention on the scene where one of the 3 rules are broken, and Gizmo gives birth to a litter of Mogwai, but things aren't quite as they seem. Westy, this scene.
The giving birth scene, I was traumatised. This, when he's just on his front kicking, screaming.
Yeah.
And these
awful.
Fur balls start coming out of him and flying around the room. I was thinking, why is everyone else not as freaked out as I am? I've got it written in my notes here, I would be a touch more surprised, which I think I would be.
Just a touch.
Just a touch. Which is ridiculous. And even Feldman said, can I have one now? And he's like, it's neat. Yeah, it really is. Just keeps looking at the cover. What?
Neat. He's just birthed 5 of his kin.
There's 5 of these things that I don't know what they are. Never seen them before in my life. No one knows what they are. There's 3 rules. We know that one of them kills them. One of them makes more of them. So, let's not get freaked out by this and tell me, Mum. I'll just say, Dad, they multiply with water. And he's like, just water did this? It's just normal water, was it? Yeah, it fucking was.
I'll sell them now.
What we're going to do about it? He's just like, this is it. The Peltzer pet. Beautiful.
Ka-ching.
It's like you're just watching this film, just going, I'm watching a car crash happen in slow motion and nobody cares about it at all whatsoever. It's so good because it doesn't give a shit, and this is the first time that you're brought into the film and you're like, right, well, this is going to take you places that you can't really predict where it's going to go. And I love the use of camera angles here. This is where we first see the Dutch angle, when the first the fur ball comes out, the first one, and switches to that Dutch angle, and you're just like, right, this is really fun. It's really playful. This is going to be something else. So yeah, it's a perfect time of the film for that to ramp it up a notch.
Those effects, they look great, but really simple. It's just fur on a balloon that's inflated.
Yeah.
But it looks absolutely fantastic. I do think there is a case for Gizmo to be put down here, quite frankly. He's a hazard.
He is a hazard.
One false move and he'll multiply, and none of his offspring are pleasant either, so he's the only one who's any good out of the litter.
Yeah.
They're all evil bastards. So I think cut ties and get rid of him.
Yeah, cut ties, look outside.
He's
There's
cute,
snow
I know
everywhere.
that.
And there's snow everywhere. You're just going to be thinking, how am I going to avoid water here? It's nigh on impossible. There's no motivation for him to keep all of these things.
Not at all.
It doesn't make any sense apart from us as an audience going, go on, let's see what happens.
That's
go
amazing.
On, that's amazing.
Well, put him in the bath. Let's get some more.
Which they do in a swimming pool, so you're like, this is even better.
What about you, Matt?
Yeah, we're going to get into the practical effects in more detail later, but this scene for me is made by how simple and practical they are. When they pop out and the pain that Gizmo was in, as a kid,
screeching, isn't he?
Yeah, really screeching. Like this little kid watching this cute little thing go through pain like that. That's not good. But what really gets me still as an adult is the close-ups of the faces when they're opening their eyes and the peeling the ears off the face and they're all sticky and gooey. I mean, even though that kind of does turn my stomach a bit, but I think it's classic Joe Dante in that he sets up the scene as really sinister and foreboding. But then he makes it funny when you see them all downstairs and they've just ripped Billy's presents open and they're just causing absolute havoc.
Playing the trumpet.
Yeah. And one does that massive spit towards Gizmo and Barney. And Barney, I mean, let's talk about Barney from as a dog. He gives a great performance. You see, he just looks so thoroughly fed up. You don't blame him for a minute.
Props to Barney there.
My best Barney moment is we'll talk about it at the end, but when Gizmo comes past him in the car and he just jumps out the way. Fuck's sake.
Oh man, yeah.
He gets tortured in this film.
He does. Yeah.
Poor bastard.
Considering the Mogwai are about 6 inches tall, I have no idea how they managed to tie him up outside. I don't think they have the strength or the reach.
That's
even
horrible.
If they were on each other's shoulders.
It's horrible as well.
They'd have to construct some sort of police system, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it was beyond them.
It is definitely beyond them.
They can disable brakes of a car later on. I wouldn't put anything past them. What a bunch of bastards. They're horrible, aren't they?
Yeah.
I don't really understand the gestation period here. Within seconds, Gizmo's given birth to 5 of his kind, and they've grown up immediately.
Yeah.
They're instantly adults, or adults comparatively.
How far can we go into this? I mean, it is Gremlins. How far can we go into the reality of it?
Yeah.
I mean, the whole film to me, it's like a Looney Tunes film to me. It's got that kind of cartoon logic to it.
Yeah.
Which is absolutely Joe Dante to a T, I think.
Yeah, it is. I absolutely love it when they do come out. The mischievous as hell, you said it, Matt. They do opening presents downstairs playing on the arcade game. Yeah. When Pete goes to stroke one of them, I think it's Stripe, and he goes to bite them. And then they all start giggling away. Little bastards. Well, on Pete, Corey Feldman, obviously an 80s staple.
Yeah.
What do you think of his performance in the film?
I think he's pretty underused, to be honest. I think he is good when he's on screen. He is believable as that character. I think he was given this role because Spielberg dropped him out of E.T. because he had a character in E.T.
Right.
And so he got this through that. But I think he's just in there because he is a really good actor, but I don't really think the role fits his ability, if you know what I mean. I think he needs a bit of a better role. He needs to get in there a little bit more and do more and maybe change the story a little bit or take one and then things happened. If he'd fed it after midnight and it happened to him and it was more of a best friend role, instead he just kind of walks over.
I mean, I love Corey Feldman. He's great. He makes every film that he's in, I think, enjoyable. I'm warm to that actor and all the characters that he plays. I've got a couple of questions. First one, I think we've already covered it. Why doesn't Pete lose his mind when he sees Gizmo? He's a kid. He should surely love all that stuff. He's nonplussed by the whole thing.
Yeah.
But why is Billy, who's old enough to work in a bank, why does he have a best friend who's a little boy? That is not explained. That's weird.
I think there was an earlier draft, though, where Billy was younger, and then as the rewrote it, Billy becomes older, but they'd already cast Feldman. So it was kind of in place, and that's why. And I think it works just because Zach Galligan is such a solid presence. So you can imagine Pete's parents being, oh, he's going to hang out with an adult. Oh, it's Billy. Oh, that's fine.
Yeah, fine.
He's like a big kid anyway, isn't he?
He's solid, isn't he?
He's a dependable guy. He's going to be fine.
Yeah. You mentioned there about early drafts of the screenplay. The original intention for Gizmo was that he was going to transform into Stripe, obviously the leader of the Gremlins, but Spielberg said that audience would want as much Gizmo as possible, so the idea was rewritten and just have him stay as the cute furball.
Yeah.
You like Gizmo? You think he's a cute little guy? He's irresistible, isn't he?
Totally.
Yeah, he is. He's modelled off Spielberg's dog, isn't he?
Yeah.
So that's him, Lucas. They're all just modelling shit off the dogs. Chewbacca, Indiana Jones named after it, Gizmo. What kind of dogs have these people got? It's the strangest fucking thing I've ever seen in my life.
bags of wit, invention, and great characters in the opening of Gremlins. Great start.
Lovely.
It's fantastic.
The director.
The man who made it all possible, and that is director Joe Dante. We haven't talked about it on the podcast before, but
No.
I think we're all fans.
Yeah.
Westy, what do you think about Dante generally?
I'm a big fan of Joe Dante generally because he feels to me like he does classic cinema, but he draws it with crayons. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's got a real innocence and a real charm and a real childlike excitement about his films. There's these levels of humour that he puts in, and there's so many little bits in his films. Like The Burbs, for me, is one of my all-time favourite films.
Snap.
I love The Howling. I love Inner Space. I love Explorers. I love Gremlins too.
Explorers is great.
Yeah, and it just think that all of these have kind of tied together, and he's got his group. And I think John Hora as well deserves a shout out. His cinematographer, which he worked with on everything from The Howling all the way to Gremlins 2. So he did everything apart from Inner Space, but he was in Inner Space. He's actually got like a little role in there, which is really good. But it does feel like this is very, very heavily influenced by Spielberg. And I think you've got got elements of Dante, but I think Spielberg's the train that's carrying this down the tracks. But you know, Dante's designing what it looks like almost. But I do love his 80s stint. I think he's done some very, very important films in that time, and I do think he's very influential. He's like Columbus and he's like Zemeckis for me. He just kind of sits in that group.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of him as well. And I always think he's got, like, one of his trademarks, I think, in his films. He just seems like a really mischievous filmmaker. In Gremlins, he trashes this idyllic Christmas. In The Burbs, he trashes the idea of lovely kind of middle-class suburban America. In Gremlins 2, he trashes, like, commercialism and mass entertainment. And I think that's what he's like. When I watch his films, I think he's like a big kid just having enormous fun. But I think the key thing is he's a smart kid. He doesn't let his films go out of control. He's always got a really firm hand on where the story's going to go, and he's not just having fun. He knows how to tell it with characters, and he's got a really, really good handle on the tone of a film as well. And Westy mentioned it there, and I would agree. His films aren't childish, but they're childlike. And I think that's a big difference between the two, and that's why his films work as well as they do. And at heart, I think he's basically a B-movie guy. I think he's just happy making big-scale B-movies. And we've mentioned there his contemporaries, people like Spielberg and Zemeckis. I think the difference is, between Dante and them, he's never wanted to grow up, and he's never wanted to make something mature. And I think if you can imagine all them at school together, I think that those two would have their heads in like the history books, and they'd be going like physics lessons to work out how cameras work. And I think Dante would be absolutely happy at the back of the classroom just reading comic strips and drawing cartoons. That's him in his absolute element.
Or just like coming up with inventions in the background, just like the bathroom buddy or something, just that don't work but are loads of fun anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
One of them directors, isn't he, where you just say, who's Joe Dante? And then you read his films out and they'll go, Joe Dante.
That makes sense.
And it's always fun. And I think that's why he's probably quite underrated, because he's never tried to make that step into like serious cinema. He's never made a film that, you think, he's going to win an Oscar for that, because he's never gone down that road. But that run of films he's made through the 80s and 90s, that's a run I've just got huge affection for. And knowing I'm going to sit down and watch a Joe Dante film just makes me really, really happy. I think he's great. I love the guy.
Loads of fun. I've got a real soft spot for him. He's one of the names that I really recognise from watching films as a kid. Obviously this, Inner Space and The Burbs, the films like you've mentioned. I certainly don't think, though, had Gremlins not been a success as it was, I don't think he would have went on to have the career that he has had. You mentioned it, Matt, that he's kind of like a B-movie director, and that's exactly what The Howling was. And he got this because Spielberg loved The Howling. And he caught a break and got the mainstream, which exposed him and allowed him to do things like Inner Space and The Burbs. But I really don't think he would have had that success and have that cachet without the break that he caught from Spielberg on this.
Yeah.
So what about his work on this film specifically?
I think his work on Gremlins, I think it's superb. There's such a sense of like anarchy to this film, kind of like
chaos, isn't it?
Absolute chaos once it gets going, once it all kicks off. And I think that's Dante to a T. And I can imagine him making this, just cackling away to himself behind the camera. I just imagine he was having so much fun with this. And what he's got to juggle in this film to make it work is really impressive, particularly when you consider he nails pretty much every aspect of it. Like, he's really, really comfortable with those practical effects. Like, he knows how to light the Gremlins. He knows how to edit around them to disguise the fact that they can't really move particularly well.
Yeah.
You never really think of that, because he just knows how to make them work on screen. But it's not just an effects film. And I think if the only good thing about this film was the effects, I don't think we'd be talking about it still.
No.
He gets really good performances out of the actors. I think there's some really, really impressive compositions here, what he does with the visuals. Mm-hmm. He's got great comic timing. All the jokes really land.
Yeah, they do. This is funnier than most films that I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
I would rewatching it for this. I was howling away at the film, but I think it's really biting and it's really nasty in places, but it still feels really warm.
Yeah. I think that's the most impressive thing he does, actually. This film, tonally, it is all over the place, but he makes it work. He goes from really dark scenes to really funny scenes, and you don't feel any kind of, like, whiplash. You don't feel you've been taken out of the film at any point. He clearly loves monster films, and I think he just channels that love into something contemporary. And for me, this film is just the perfect marriage of material to the director.
Yes, I'm very much the same. I think this is just the product of people, especially Dante, having a very, very good time. Like, I don't think any of the days, none of the days on set would have been dull. I don't think, it's just, what can you think of next? It's almost like a challenge for them to come up with something that's going to entertain them. And I think when filmmakers try to entertain themselves by being honest to their own vision, then it's just so much more entertaining for everybody else. But you've got to have that confidence to do that. And a lot of directors don't have the confidence to do that. And they rely on subject matter that they know is going to work a certain way. They use music a certain way, or they use actors a certain way, and let them do what they do because it's guaranteed. But I think Joe Dante wants a Joe Dante film. And always does, and no matter who's in it. Like Phoebe Cates in this, I watched this and I thought she's going to be huge. She's amazing. Like, her performance is just superb. It's really tortured. Dick Miller in this, fantastic. Judge Reinhold as well. He kind of flies under the radar, but what a dick, but what a great performance. Great performance.
It isn't Captain Clip-On.
Exactly. What a dick. But you can see even that scene
massive dick.
when he's supposed to be an arsehole, it's still really warm, like you said, Luke. It's just it's still really accessible. And I think every Joe Dante film is accessible, whether you're 5 years old or you're 95.
Mm-hmm. I think it's got Dante written all over it. I know he didn't write the film, but it feels as though he shaped the material to fit his style and imposed his style on it. It's got this really nasty, uncompromising tone, which doesn't sound appealing really at all, but it just works. Yeah. I think Gizmo and the Gremlins are irresistible for different reasons. The Gremlins, like all great bad guys, you just want more of them. Yeah. And I want to see as much mayhem as possible, see how much they can create. And I think it's obviously down to the effects team, of course, but I think it's Dante who's running the show, and you can tell that. I know that's Spielberg's big influence, but Dante is the head honcho.
Yeah, he's great. And if you look at his work, he's got about 5 shots that he always goes to. He's got the extreme close-up when they're eating chicken, which is disgusting. Tends
to be stomach up there.
Horrible with the sound.
Yeah, he goes that real extreme close-up. He loves a side-tracking shot. He loves moving the camera. He loves that push, that zoom in, that quick zoom, but he doesn't use it like Tarantino uses it. He uses it like a B-movie horror, and he loves that Dutch angle. He'll use that on everything. As soon as you hear something slightly wrong on the soundtrack, boom, the camera almost seems to fall off the tripod, like, bam. And he's just, your reaction there, look, I would imagine is Joe Dante's reaction when he's shooting it. Like, that looks amazing. Yeah. It's almost like he owns that, like, them shots are his. They are, like, chapter 1 obvious camera moves in the book of cinema. But he kind of owns them a little bit.
Yeah, you can't mention Joe Dante without mentioning legendary character actor Dick Miller, who plays Murray Futterman in Gremlins.
Yeah.
Miller's appeared in all of Dante's films. So what do you think of him here as the slightly deranged Mr. Futterman, Westy?
I think he's fantastic. I love him. He's such a great character. He's lost his job and he's down on his luck, but he's just so traditional. Like, he reminds me of, like, when I first watched this, it was like my granddad's attitude was exactly the same, like foreign televisions and just like, I'm going to drive this snowplow around. I've got my own chair in the middle of the sitting room. I'm not talking to her. The fucking television doesn't work. Jesus Christ. And it's got like our place outside, and you know that's not his idea. Like,
of course.
It's just like, what, I want more beer? He's like blowing into the bottle, and that little speech he gives when he's like talking about Gremlins and World War II, and it's really hard hitting if you let it be. You just know that he's kind of expired the culture society's moved faster than he has.
Society's moved on and he hasn't caught up.
And he would never will. He's a stubborn character, but really lovable. And I love him in 2 as well. He gets a lot more of a bigger role in 2.
His role in 2's ridiculous.
But brilliant.
His place in that story doesn't make sense
just
whatsoever.
turns up into the apartment. All right. There he is. But you're like, that's Dante, isn't it? He's like, we're bringing him back here for no reason. And I'm going to put him in here for no reason. The snowplow's going to go through the house and we're going to leave it ambiguous. Brilliant.
I love it when he's talking to Billy right at the start. He's talking about buying American, and he's saying his snowplow hasn't given him any grief for 15 years. Do you know why? Kentucky Harvester. It ain't some foreign piece of crap. It's Kentucky Harvester.
As if it's the most obvious thing in the world. But of course it is.
It's when he freaks out. He's like, there's real gremlins in the harvester. And it's like that scream.
He's got a picture of Nixon on his wall.
Of course he has.
Fantastic.
Innocent man.
What about you, Matt?
Yeah, I totally agree with you guys. He's just fantastic. He always is when he turns up in any Dante film. You know, he has one scene in The Burbs, and he's fantastic in that as the garbage man.
He's the garbage man.
He's absolutely hilarious. But yeah, in this, you know, I'm really glad he does have more to do, because I think he is a character who really stands out, and I think kind of Dante uses him as a little bit of satire because he's so stuck in the past and he's so patriotic. And we mentioned that he's got the picture of Nixon on his wall, so he's like that kind of American. But like everything he believes in gets trashed in this film. You know, everything falls apart. And I think that's just like Dante's sense of humour. You know, he isn't bashing you over the head with satire. He isn't making the film political, but he's just tweaking it a little bit. And I think that's what he uses Miller for here. And I think Miller, he's just the perfect actor for it, because he's just got that like down-to-earth believability, blue-collar aspect to him.
Yeah.
But he's been, I only know him from Joe Dante films, and he's been in 184 credits on IMDb.
Yeah. He's been in everything.
But he was in 1941 with Spielberg, so I think that might be where the connection started.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, he's obviously in the Terminator, the gun store.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's in The Howling as well, isn't he? So
yeah. Every Dante film.
Everyone,
We mentioned at the top Patreon. Obviously, we talk about it a lot, but one of the benefits of being an ATRM patron is that you can ask us questions and we'll answer them on the show. So from Sheriff Ahmed, who's one of our patrons, wonderful guy, he says, is Gremlins a Christmas film? It may sound like a straightforward question, but I think we've got a couple of different views. We'll go with Matt first.
Well, it's set at Christmas. It has an absolutely massive Christmas song over the titles, as we've discussed. Mm-hmm. It's actually about Christmas, because it's about getting presents, and it's about putting a little thought into what you get people might not actually be the most appropriate thing to get. Mm-hmm. There's people dressed up as Santa Claus. Christmas decorations are all over the place. I think you would have to be from another planet to argue that it's not a Christmas film. Yet Westy has the expression on his face that says he's going to go for it. So let's see.
Is yours, Westy?
It's not a Christmas film for me. It's not. It just isn't. Because it's the same as like Lethal Weapon. It's very simple. That's got a Christmas song in the end titles. That's about Christmas. That's Christmas themed all the way through. There's people dressed as Santa. Someone gets a present somewhere, I'm sure. But like, I know everyone. Oh, fucking hell, he's an idiot. Well, okay, maybe I am, but it doesn't sit with me.
You haven't said anything yet.
I know. I'm just predicting. Right. Here's my explanation. Is everybody ready?
Okay.
Here
it comes.
Okay. Right.
Settle in.
Mm-hmm. No. It doesn't sit with me as a Christmas film. I just don't think it kind of packs that weight, because my attention was more on the Gremlins and what they were doing and the situations and the explosions and people flying out of windows and action. So for me, it's more of an end of the year film. It sits perfectly around this time that we're talking about it, because for me, this is 50% Christmas, 50% Halloween, and I lean towards the Halloween element. I lean towards the scary element a little bit more, and the Christmas just seems to be put in there just to decorate the set and just to make it feel a certain way in that small town, because the community comes together and it gives you a character in itself. You automatically give people a feeling of warmth, and I think that's what you need to do to counterbalance the violence and the action that happens here. If this happened in the summer in Alabama or something, it would be like Critters, and it doesn't work. So you've got to kind of balance things out, and I think he brings the warmth and that element, and it gives a lot of forgiveness if you base it at Christmas, because people are already happy because you're giving them Christmas songs, you put them in a certain mood, and I think it's done to counterbalance the violence, it's done to counterbalance the fear. So for me, it's the fear element, it's the scare element, it's the violence element, it's the action element that I buy into in Gremlins, not the Christmas element. I hope that makes sense.
Wow.
Okay.
Two ends of the scale there. Well, it didn't make it in our top 10 Christmas list last year when we did the ranking Christmas.
Because it's not a Christmas film.
Which was a surprise for some. I never used to consider it a Christmas film, and I think that's because I didn't have a connection to it as a kid. And the reason I didn't have that connection is because it freaked me the fuck out when I watched it when I was like 6.
Fair enough.
And I think those connections have an impact in later life, really evocative of your childhood this time of year.
Yeah.
So whatever you watch then, you bring into your adulthood, certainly for me anyway.
Yeah.
And because I didn't watch it then, I didn't consider it a Christmas film. But viewed now, yeah, I mean, it's a Christmas film. 1,000,000,000%.
It's a 1,000,000,000% doesn't exist anyway.
So on a technicality,
You've gone too far.
It's a Christmas film.
Oh, whatever.
it is. Which is why we're releasing it in December at Christmas.
Yeah, and this is why it's our Christmas episode.
Yeah.
Oh, fuck off.
We've mentioned Steven Spielberg so far. He'd gotten hold of the script for Gremlins and loved it. And he had considered another director briefly for Gremlins. And that was Tim Burton. He'd been creating quite a lot of buzz for his short film Frankenweenie.
Yeah.
And Spielberg was interested in him, but opted for Dante based on Burton's inexperience, and because Dante's 1981 film The Howling, we've mentioned it, Spielberg loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dante said, the first time I heard Gremlins, it was in a Bugs Bunny cartoon where they're trying to tear an airplane apart. And he says, I remember getting this script in the mail and thinking this must have been sent to the wrong address. But Stephen had seen The Howling, really wanted to make a low-budget horror movie.
Right.
You mentioned it as well, Matt. The rules for the Mogwai were partly influenced by the production's kind of inexperience with these special effects. The bright light rule was introduced so that the darkness in the film could be introduced to mask the puppetry where it didn't look fantastic.
Yeah.
The cutaways and stuff like that. Kind of masterful when you think about it, that cutting-edge technology from an effects point of view, so we'll just use camera trickery to kind of mask where it doesn't really hit the mark. And I don't think there's many parts in the film where it isn't seamless with the rest of the action.
No, I don't think so. I mean, he did that in The Howling as well, didn't he? Use that technique quite a bit with the darkness.
Exactly.
Because
Yes, he
he
did.
didn't have the budget for it. So he's bringing that straight over from his experience, which I think really works. It adds that, dark element. But Tim Burton doing this would have been fucking terrifying. And he would have argued with Spielberg every single day. There would have been no fun whatsoever.
Well, yeah.
No.
It would have just been straight
Definitely.
down the line. You would have the backstory from Phoebe Cates, but he probably would have filmed it, and he would have been in the black Santa suit, climbing down, see him getting stuck, suffocating.
Johnny Depp would be in there.
That would be Johnny Depp. But yeah, it would have been, there would have been too many, spirals around, and it all would have looked a little bit ridiculous.
It would be like a haunted mansion at the end of town.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's where Mrs. Deagle lives.
Yeah.
Yeah. He wouldn't be able to juggle the tones like Dante does. I just don't think
I don't
that's
think
Tim
so.
Burton's skill at all.
Nah.
He has one
No,
tone
no,
and
I
that's
don't
it.
think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, dark.
Yeah.
Monotone.
Weird. Few tones there, actually.
Dark and weird. Amazing.
Once the film was finished, it was screened for Warner's studio execs, and a note from one of them suggested that Dante reduced the number of gremlins in the film because he thought there were too many, and Spielberg suggested cutting them all out altogether and changing the title to People.
He's a right cock when he wants to be Spielberg, isn't he?
What a burn that is.
Yeah. Oh, let's just change it to People then, dickhead. Because I'm the sheriff, asshole.
Obviously, Spielberg, at the height of his powers in the mid-80s, his name was plastered all over films that he exec-produced, and he exec-produced this one as well. Films like The Goonies, Back to the Future, massive, massive films.
Yeah.
And I think a little bit of this went to his head in Gremlins. You mentioned it, Westy, but Spielberg references are just littered throughout the film.
All the way through, yeah.
You've got those E.T. working titles.
Yeah.
This is the first film with the emblem logo at the top.
Yeah.
Obviously, the billboard at the start, rocking Ricky Rialto, done up like Indiana Jones.
Yeah. He's in it as well, isn't he?
He's in it, yeah. He's at the convention that ran that.
Yeah, just riding around.
Yeah.
He's footing the cast, having a whale of a time. Was everyone pissed when they made this?
So Joe Dante at his creative best, being given a break by one of the most powerful men in Hollywood at the time as well. Can't go wrong.
And it didn't.
The cast.
We've talked about some of the cast already. In this section, we're focusing on the two leads. First up, Zach Galligan, who plays Bill Peltzer. Matt, what do you think about Galligan as Billy?
I think he's incredibly likeable in this, and I think what's interesting is, just on the paper, there's not that much there. He's a very kind of square protagonist for his age, like particularly when you contrast him to Marty McFly, Ferris Bueller, young characters who are like forming bands, skipping school. Billy holding down a solid job in a bank.
Yeah, wholesome fella, isn't he?
He is. But, he's got to do that because obviously his dad is an absolute moron. He's probably bringing very little money in, so, Billy doesn't have much choice. So I think the fact that we do like him as much as we do, that all comes from Galligan's performance, I think. I love the intro to him when he runs into the bank and he's a bit late. He puts his name slot on the counter, but it's upside down. Yeah. And then Kate's having to come over to him and sort his tie out for him. And I think it's a really nice touch when she asks him to sign that petition, and he does without asking a question because he quite clearly just adores her.
Yeah, absolutely in love with her.
Yeah. But then just makes you think, for fuck's sake, do none of the Peltzer family ask questions about anything? Everything that happens, no questions asked. Oh yeah, I'll do that. Everything that's good about Billy in this film comes from the performance because, like I say, on paper, there's probably not a lot there, so he brings everything out.
Yeah.
I know there were some other big names considered at the time. I know Emilio Estevez's name was in the mix, which could have been an interesting way to go, I think. But I think Galligan's great. I really like him in this.
I think he's got a lot of heart. He's got a lot of warmth. I think he's somebody that we can relate to, and I think he's somebody that we root for, certainly.
Definitely, yeah.
What about you, Westy?
He's all right, isn't he? I mean, he's a bit wet.
And he's a bit wet. He's a little bit unremarkable.
He's a terrible hero. He's just there to make Gizmo look like a hero, which means that he's schmaltzy and a little bit, just a little bit, maybe too nice and a bit too try hard in places. There's a bit when he tries to confront the sheriff and he shouts at him. You wouldn't take him seriously at all. He hasn't got much of a range, but the range the range that he's got in this is perfect for this.
Yeah,
it really works. You need to be this really lovely guy who gets this really cute little thing and things happen and you don't solve any problems. You just run around trying to get a girl who's clearly more powerful than you are and a stronger character.
Clearly punching as well, isn't he?
Oh, well, without a shadow of a doubt. But he's just a very, he's a bit of a wet lettuce for me. He's all right, but not much of a range. He works as Billy, but that's about it.
I agree with both of you, really. Not massively remarkable, not fireworks, but he does a solid job. I think the character of Billy is not to be trusted, an absolute liability. The first night he has Gizmo, he blasts light into his eye and cuts his head. Second night, water on him. Third night, feeds his spawn after midnight. Irresponsible as fuck.
And he uses all of that fucking chicken. They haven't got much money coming in. Everyone's on their arse. A whole plate of chicken? I would have been fucking furious with him. Billy, where's that chicken? Oh, I'll give it to the fucking things. And now the cocoons.
And now they're monsters.
Oh, great. So I've got monsters up here, and I've got no fucking chicken. Where's your dad?
He's at a convention with a bathroom buddy.
Outrageous.
Out of his depth.
He should have just ran away. It's madness. It's absolute madness. But he's the only person who probably could have played him where you go, yeah, actually, that cute little gremlin is probably more of a man than you are.
As Matt mentioned, there were other actors in the frame for Billy. Emilio Estevez, you mentioned Judd Nelson were the frontrunners as well. Spielberg watched Estevez's tape and he said, look, he's internalising. I don't like it. Get rid of him. So he didn't get the part.
Wow. What could he possibly internalise in this script? Comic book number 1, where'd you get it from? Dr. Fantasies. There's no lines you can internalise in this whole thing.
Galligan got the gig because of his chemistry with Phoebe Cates in their screen test. He rested his head on Cates' shoulder and looked into the camera all dreamy. And when Spielberg saw this, he said, oh my God, look at that. He's in love with her already. I don't need to see anything else. Give him the job.
Yeah, and then Phoebe Cates was interviewed later and she said, I don't really remember the audition. It was all right. Friend zone.
Know your place, Galligan.
He's Billy, isn't he, in real life?
Well, Kate's also said that kissing Zach Galligan was like kissing her brother.
I can
And
understand
Galligan
that.
blamed Spielberg for making him feel nervous, but no, not reciprocated at all.
Yeah, I can maybe
Come on,
understand
mate.
a view on that. He is a bit like, oh, is this going to be all right?
I mean, he's having a laugh, basically.
Get stuck in there.
Get stuck in there.
I'm like, oh, Stephen's put me off. What do you think about Stephen for? Just kiss the girl.
John Williams score.
It appears that Galligan was in absolute awe of being involved in the film completely. I mean, who wouldn't be, really? But he said, I was this geeky kid, and being in this movie was really kind of a dream. I got to blow up a movie theatre and work with great people. Just in his element, having a great time.
Same as everybody else, though. I mean, it does fit. It does fit the whole framework of the film. You do need someone like that in there.
Joe Dante had to keep on telling him during production to keep his mouth closed during scenes when he wasn't talking. He was just standing there gawping at Kate, so the fact that Spielberg was around.
Sounds like any of us get the chance to make a film. That's what
Yeah, to be fair.
Galligan did appear in Gremlins 2, of course, and other movies like Waxwork Films, Warlock of the Armageddon. He's had a steady acting career, but his films basically just straight to DVD, including Cyborg 3, The Recycler. Classic.
Oh, yeah. Great. Next cutting room, is it?
Straight on the floor. Finally on our cast list is Phoebe Cates. She plays Kate Beringer. Gotta love Phoebe Cates.
Yeah.
Oh, she's lovely.
My view on this is she's far too good of an actress to be in this film. There's such a weight to her character. It's almost like she's in a different film, like she doesn't know she's filming Gremlins. And she's got this backstory and she doesn't like Christmas, and I love that about her because I don't like Christmas. And she's great in this, and she's great in Gremlins too. And she's absolutely brilliant in Drop Dead Fred as well, which should be a massive throwaway film. But she brings a weight to that character and a real, emotion to it. And she should be in a lot more things, and she isn't. And in my head, like, she was one of the things that remind me of my childhood is watching her in these films. And she's like, Fast Times in Ridgemont High, Gremlins, Gremlins 2, Drop Dead Fred. Them 4 films were films I watched growing up, and I thought, well, where's she gone? She should have been huge.
Yeah, I know she nearly wasn't casting this because of Fast Times at Ridgemont High, because she did a topless scene in that, but I can't imagine Gremlins without her in it, because I think she's really great in this. Yeah. I think kind of like Billy in the sense that she's really solid and she's likeable, but there's just so much more to her character than there is to his. Those little hints early on that
I agree.
There's something not quite, I'm not going to say not quite right with it, but there's definitely a pass to her. And something's going to come out, and I like how it balances out because you've got to, working those shifts for free in Dory's Tavern to keep it going, and you think, that's really great. But then when you do get to that bit, that monologue genuinely is one of my favourite monologues in cinema. The way she sells that, she just throws every little bit of ability she's got into that, and it's just horrifying to hear. It's just a fantastic bit of acting. So I can't imagine this film without her. I think she's probably the best performer in the film.
Yeah, I think most interesting character for me in the film, certainly. In fact, I much prefer Phoebe Cates to be the lead in the film.
Yeah, that would be far
much
better
more interesting.
if she got Gizmo and everything started happening. But then again, she's not stupid, so it wouldn't work.
Yeah, that's true enough.
She's got to fix the problem, not cause it, and I think she does that really well.
Yeah, I think she's got this real great bite of cynicism, which, I mean, that comes a lot in the film as well. She's clearly dealing with some traumatic issues, like you've mentioned there, Matt, and she's got some great dialogue as well. When she's talking about not loving Christmas to Billy, and he takes exception to this, she says, see, you hate Washington's birthday or Thanksgiving and nobody cares, but see, you hate Christmas and everybody makes you feel like a leper. Yeah. Great line. Great line of dialogue, and it feels as though she's being given all the good lines.
Yeah.
Brilliant. You mentioned it as well, Matt. The studio wasn't particularly happy with Kate's being cast as Kate. She starred in Fast Times at Ridgemont High a couple of years earlier, particularly a racist scene where she's topless, and the studio didn't think she'd be able to pull it off, didn't think she was wholesome enough. And Dante, he'd seen Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and he said, I think she's awfully wholesome.
Of course he did.
Good for you, Joe.
So on that scene, Matt, the one that stands out for Phoebe Cates, where she's explaining the reason why she doesn't like Christmas. Westy, what do you think about that?
It is. It's heartbreaking, but it just shows the tones in the film and how well Dante balances them and how he gives her this time and how it's a very quiet moment in the bank and everything's just falling apart around them. But she somehow binds the film together with this story. She brings this real level of reality to it, and the fantasy almost goes away, which adds weight to the ending because it's got that extra strength to it. I think it's a perfect place to put it, but she delivers it so beautifully. It's so well done. Yeah. And the writing as well, the way that's written. You've got lots of questions because you go, well, how didn't you smell him if he's been up there 4 or 5 days? How on earth is he up there? And then you find out that's how she discovered it, because of the smell, and he snapped his neck and he died immediately. Yeah. It makes it believable. It does it really well. I mean, imagine Billy doing that.
No.
His dad wouldn't fit down the chimney anyway, so it makes no difference.
I mean, I don't know what he's thinking coming down the chimney. I mean, what idiot. Yeah. But still, I mean, it's a horror story in it, and she sells it. Mm-hmm. I think you're right. I think it's the best written piece of dialogue in the end. Well, I think just all her dialogue. Mm-hmm. She's strongest character, best written dialogue, definitely. What about you, Matt?
I mean, I do know this is a scene that the studio got very, very nervous about. I think, including Spielberg, he wasn't sure if it should stay in or not, and Dante fought really, really hard for it. And I just can't imagine the film without it. No. It's like a punch in the gut. It's the one bit of the film that isn't funny at all. Everything else, no matter how dark it gets, is always like a little comic twist to it. This is the only time where it's just, that's horrible, and deal with it. And that explains the character. And I just love how it's just dropped in and it's not remarked upon again at all. There's no payoff down the line, because it doesn't need to be.
Not at all.
No.
It just adds a lot of depth to that character.
It does, yeah. A lot of unexpected depth as well.
Mm-hmm. Spielberg and the studio weren't too sure how to take it. Was it supposed to be funny, or was it supposed to be serious? And that's why Dante, like you said, Matt, fought for it, is because that he thought it was like the perfect metaphor for the film, a mixture of funny or serious. I don't know how to take this.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a horrendous story, and one that's always stuck with me since I was a kid. And despite Joe Dante's assertions, I really don't think there's anything funny in that for me. No. I take it deadly seriously. Really vivid story, and I can picture it in my mind's eye, and it's a terrifying thought.
It's absolutely horrible.
Well, on that, another question from one of our patrons, this time from Anna Randall.
Hello, Anna.
What up, Anna? She says, do you think Kate's storyline about a father should have been developed more? She said, personally, I think the character could have been fleshed out more, but she still watches every Christmas and loves it. Mm-hmm. Just would like a bit more development of that character. Would you like to see that?
I don't think you need any more. I think you get it from that backstory. I think you don't really want to go any further into that. You totally understand where she gets her strength from. You get she's been supporting her mother all the way through from all these years, and they've been ignoring Christmas, and they maybe don't put any decorations up, and you can see where her strength comes from, and that from that one monologue. So I think you don't really need to flesh any more out, because then you start moving away from Gremlins terrorising the town, and you start thinking about other things. I think that's just enough for me.
I think she's probably the most fleshed out character in the film.
Yeah, anyway, yeah.
Because the focus is the Gremlins. I mean, obviously the characters are great, but I don't think there's scope for any more character development. I don't think the story or the narrative really requires it.
Nah, definitely not. There's no time. Let's just watch these little things go and fuck the town up.
That's all you need.
That's all you need.
What about you, Matt? You'd like to see more development of Kate?
No, I'm in complete agreement with you guys, because I think the only way you could do it would be having scenes of her alone in a house, looking mournfully at a picture of a man, and I think it would just be distracting. If you sort of kind of seeding this in earlier, I think that would mean you would need a payoff at the end. You know, she would get a stepfather figure from somewhere, which you just don't need. So I think just isolating it as this one story that explains everything about it, it's all you need. And I don't think it would give her any depth. It would just seem messy and unnecessary. And I mean that, if you do think about it, it does add even more depth to the character. Maybe the fact that she's working at Dory's Tavern, maybe it isn't just to support that place. Maybe it's because she'll do anything to keep herself occupied over Christmas.
Yeah.
So I think in retrospect it makes that make more sense. So I think there's more than enough depth in there to compensate for anything else you could have written around it.
Yeah, I mean, you do get that resolution. She is standing on the family porch with the family, part of the family at the end. Yeah. She's in the house, it's all warm. She's kind of accepted it.
Yeah, just our mothers at home thinking about
Miserable.
what might have been.
Sobbing.
Left alone.
Bottle of Jack Daniels.
Opening her wrist.
Looking up the chimney. Not like the fire, just in case.
Slowly freezing to death.
Yeah. Brilliant. There's your sequel.
Like you mentioned, Westy, Kate seemed destined for stardom with her early efforts, but her career tailed off until she retired from acting mid-90s, focusing more on her family. She got a starring role in Bright Lights, Big City with Michael J. Fox, late 80s. Really worth searching out that. Very good.
Great film.
Yeah.
Other than that, slightly disappointing that she didn't go on to have the career that I think she deserved.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, definitely.
So the cast on Gremlins serving the material well. Solid performances from the two leads, not forgetting the stellar supporting cast.
Indeed.
The middle.
Into the second act of Gremlins. As we pick up the action, Billy is taking one of Gizmo's demon seed to Mr. Hansen for some analysis, while he inadvertently feeds the rest after midnight. The Mogwai cocoon before transforming into something much more dangerous and attack Billy's mother in the kitchen. Amazing scene.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
Probably my favourite scene in the whole film. I really like it. I love the Shining references as well, which I mentioned at the top. So we've got the Red Beetle, we've got her in a cardigan very similar to Shelley Duvall's character. She's holding a knife in a very similar way. There's a Calumet baking powder on the bench. You know, they've got all these little nods. And then earlier on as well, if you notice, when Billy's next to the juicer, that soundtrack, it sounds like the opening beats of The Shining.
It does, yes.
It's
Nice.
very, very similar. So it's got this
Lovely.
theme kind of running all the way through this. But yeah, this is just carnage, isn't it? it's just such fun carnage, because they've created these things that you actually want to see destroyed in the most disgusting way ever. I mean, when that finds that one at the blender, turns it on, it's just brilliant.
That's amazing.
That's just flipping around, and it's just
with,
a mess.
Flesh, gremlin flesh flying at the camera.
Yeah, and there's that whole, she does this stabbing, which is like Hitchcock, but you've got like the shadow of the gremlin on the wall, which forebodes everything, which is really Spielberg.
Great. Really good.
Yeah, it's excellent. It's just got all these like really, really great moments. It's just so enjoyable. A great, great sequence.
It's a great reminder that Dante first broke through with a horror film, because this is proper horror in a kid's film, but it's so suspenseful. And it works so well because you've just had the scene with Mr. Hansen being killed by just one gremlin, and you know Billy's mother's in the house with half a dozen or so. So you know she's really in trouble. Which again is another stupid decision by Billy. Just leave those cocoons up there with his mum in the house. Should we lock the door or anything? No, it's fine. Call the police. Nah, just leave them up there. They'll be absolutely
I'm going
fine.
out.
Yeah.
I'm off out.
On Christmas Eve as well, everyone's at school on Christmas Eve. It doesn't make any sense. Like, everyone's busy doing stuff. Like, it's absolute madness.
But that music as well, when the music comes on, it's almost like a jump scare. The way is it Johnny Mathis?
Do you hear what I hear?
Yeah, do you hear what I think? It's Johnny
See
Mathis.
what I see.
Yeah. So it's such like a middle-aged genteel piece of music, but it's so shocking because it just comes out of nowhere. And then when she turns it off, and that cut to silence, and this is where Dante really shows his horror chops, as her creeping around that shadow around the corner, the use of silence. But once you get into that kitchen, it's just mayhem, isn't it? It's brilliant.
It's carnage.
The bit in the blender, that's hilarious. But then, of course, her stabbing the one, that's actually really disturbing. See that, fury in her eyes, probably goes for it. And then, forcing the other one into the microwave, that's, horrifying and hilarious at the same time.
Yeah.
And when I saw this at the pictures last year, I noticed for the first time when she's forcing the one in the microwave, the one she's stabbed, you can see it's pinned to the kitchen top, and it's kicking its arms and legs about. It's slowly dying in the background. That's a great little detail.
That gremlin was meant to pull the knife out of itself, but they shot it, and that's what you can see in the background is that effect. So they were going to cut to a close-up of it, pulling the knife out of itself, so it's the continuity, but they said that just would have been a little bit too violent with it, just kind of pulling that out of there. Man, it's ridiculous. And that soundtrack you mentioned as well, it's great that they've picked that, because you can see the footprints on the record
You
player.
can see the in the dust.
Brilliant.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
and they've chosen that and put it in the middle of the record.
Yeah.
It's not the first song on the album.
But it's great how this is grounded as well. If you're a kid watching this, it's different to watching Star Wars or Indiana Jones, because this is so grounded in reality. Obviously, as a kid, you're not going to have a lightsaber, so you have to pretend. you have to pretend you've got a bullwhip and a revolver.
Yeah.
But if you're a kid, you're watching this, you're thinking, God, you know what? If Gremlins did invade my house, I would be able to fight them off because I do have a blender. I would shove them in the microwave.
I've got a microwave.
Yeah. So for a kid, it works really, really well.
Yeah.
But this then builds up to the one bit. This did leave me fairly traumatized as a kid. The Gremlin in the Christmas tree when that pounces on her.
Yeah.
Oh, that's just horrible. Even now I feel
strangling
uncomfortable
her with the
watching that.
lights. It's
Yeah.
like, Jesus Christ.
I mean, like, as a kid, I was like, but Christmas trees are nice. You know, I like looking at Christmas trees. They make me happy. They shouldn't be horrific. That's the one bit where I think, how on earth they got away with that? I don't know.
Yeah. And then Billy comes in and lops the head off one of them.
Yeah.
And that burning image in the fire.
Yeah.
And that noise coming from it.
Yeah.
Horrible.
Yeah.
Brilliant, though.
I love that Billy's mother turns into this like resourceful badass.
Yeah.
Like the blender kill, obviously we talked about it, amazing. But I like the scene that it doesn't dwell and the Gremlins don't get the upper hand. Billy's mom's on a game immediately.
Yeah.
Knifes one straight into the microwave.
Yeah, no messing.
And it's what is it, Raid or something that she uses on its face, and its noise when it gets it in the film. Oh, straight into the microwave. But it does explode within like 5 seconds. Very sensitive.
It's a hell of a powerful microwave.
It's on high.
It's probably a Peltzer invention. Peltzer's microwave.
That, you see, that's the thing I've got with this sequence. I think it would have been far better if you've been introduced to these inventions throughout the whole film, and I would have loved the fact that his inventions only work to kill the Gremlins. I think that would have been amazing. I think if they've gone in a juicer instead of a blender, I mean, it is a Peltzer. Yeah, it is a Peltzer blender. It's fair enough. But like if the phone backfired because she tries to speak to him on the phone, so if she kind of wrapped the phone cord around him and then hit the button and it electrified him or something, like bathroom buddies squirting the toothpaste in his face and that kind of thing.
Use the razor.
Use the razor off it. Yeah, would have been great.
Just slicing it up.
Well, on Rand, I mean, I don't know what kind of person he is. He brings this foreign body into the family home. It multiplies. He's got this crackpot idea of selling the Rand family pet or whatever he calls it. And then he just leaves, skips town and leaves the family to deal with this mayhem. I know they haven't turned into Gremlins yet, but that's an unexpected arrival.
Yeah, it would make me question my decision.
Should I leave? When I know that my invention's really shit and it's not going to win anything?
Probably.
Obviously, this scene probably the most violent in the film, and it was rated PG on its first release, which is insane. It was rated a 15 in the UK. It prompted criticisms of violent content and was jointly responsible for the introduction of the PG-13 rating in the US as we know it today. This and Temple of Doom prompted Spielberg to suggest the new rating to the MPAA. First film to be released under the rating was John Milius's Red Dawn. Thoughts on the criticism of violence in the film? Think justified?
I think so. I think it came along at a really interesting time because in the 70s you've got horror like Texas Chainsaw, Last House on the Left, which is like really pushing the boundaries in terms of violence and what you get in adult cinema. And I think it was inevitable that was going to kind of bleed into kids cinema to see like what can we now get away with in
how far can we push the boat?
Yeah, exactly. And I just think they didn't quite know how far they should or shouldn't go with it. In the same with the ratings part, I think they weren't quite sure, well, hang on, what do we do with this? Because so much of this is kid-friendly, but then you've got these scenes.
Yeah.
So I think like if this came along a few years later, it would be much softer than what we have got.
I mean, if it came out now, there's no way it would be this film, this tone.
No, absolutely not. But I think you do also have to give kids a little bit more credit, because as violent as this is, for the most part, it's kind of Looney Tunes violence. It's cartoon violence, just with like puppets instead. Yeah. And for the most part, I think kids are going to be fine with it. So I think the criticisms were definitely valid, but I think it's more to do with the fact of when this film came along than anything that's necessarily in there.
I think the way it was marketed was just confused as well. It's set up as if it's this cute furry thing that kids obviously want to go and see. But then all of a sudden, there's these little monsters who are getting their heads cut off. Yeah. It's really confused. I wouldn't change it though. The one thing I love more than most is its tone. The fact that it's completely uncompromising and does what it wants to do. Really love that. What about you, Westy? You think criticism of violence worthwhile?
I think so, because of the realistic environment in which it's portrayed. But Spielberg's kind of climbing on board with the Looney Tunes stuff. As a few years later, he comes up with the Animaniacs, which is kind of in the 90s.
Yeah, Dante did a Looney Tunes film in the 90s as well, didn't he?
He did, yeah.
Yeah.
So you've got all these elements, and I think they're playing on the fact that, you know, like Matt said, it's Looney Tunes violence, it's puppets, it's, you know, let's do that crossover. There is a nod to Texas Chainsaw when he gets attacked with a chainsaw at the end. You know, there's all these nods to this kind of splatter horror that was happening a lot in like the late 70s, early 80s, you know, and it has got a lot of that vibe to it, but it is, you know, tongue is firmly in cheek here. Like, it's funny. Completely. It's funny violence. It's always towards the evil that's there. It's always towards the gremlins, these disgusting looking horrible things that you want to see killed. So that kind of gives it a little bit of leeway.
I mean, not to revel in the violence, but when that gremlin does go in the microwave, it's like kind of hunched over.
Yeah.
You just see it pop open. It's just, what an image. I love it.
Brilliant.
Well, it's much more violent in the original script, though, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So yes, it was.
Cut a lot of the violence, like at one point, Billy's mum ends up being decapitated, doesn't she, by the gremlins?
Yes.
And they throw her head down the stairs at him.
Yeah,
I think Barney gets eaten at one point.
Eaten?
Eaten.
Whole?
The dog whole. Eaten, feasted on it alive. And there's the professor as well at the school. Originally, when Billy finds him, he's got 5 syringes inserted into his face because of the blood test. So Spielberg changed that and put it in his buttocks. Yeah, Spielberg thought that's funny, just stick it in his arse. Hilarious. In the buttocks.
And there's a massive close-up on that as well, isn't there?
Yeah, so you can tell Spielberg's like, do a push-it on that. But yeah, imagine Billy turning up and he's there with 5 syringes in his face.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah. So Spielberg obviously liked the screenplay, bought it with all of these elements in, with Billy's mum's head being thrown down the stairs and with the dog being eaten.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Crazy.
but them elements, he's probably just read that and went, oh, I can change that, make that a bit more mine.
Yeah,
but I think
I suppose he's bought the concept, hasn't he?
Yeah.
The concept, the concept's amazing. You can kind of do anything with it, and I think that's why they enjoy this so much, because it could go anywhere. You can go these places with this content, and I think that's what they've done, and done it really well.
The leader of the Gremlins, Stripe, makes it out of the Pelzer home and the local swimming pool with disastrous consequences. Billy goes to the police, who don't buy his crackpot theory. There are now hundreds of gremlins, and we're looking at their trail of destruction as they rampage through the streets of Kingston Falls. Matt, what do you think of this wave of destruction from the gremlins?
I think it's absolutely wonderful.
It's a joy, isn't it?
That is the word to do it, joy. And it's all about what we've said a few times now about this film. It's getting the tone absolutely right. And when you're a kid watching this, you're in just absolute nirvana watching it. Because basically what the Gremlins are, they're just the naughtiest, biggest kids ever. But they can get away with it because there's no one, basically, who can tell them to stop. And the thing that makes it work is how much fun they're having doing it. You know, if they weren't cackling their heads off at every opportunity, whether they're like eating the post that's going in the post box or ripping the wires out of the traffic lights, causing car crashes, if it was just like pure malice, the tone would be completely different. But it's the fact that they're having fun doing it, so you kind of get caught up in it.
You certainly do. It's difficult not to.
Yeah, that's why it works. Just the whole town absolutely getting shredded to pieces. I love it. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Westy?
Well, I mean, what's not to love about this whole thing? The only criticism I've got is like that stop motion of them all coming out of the dog is a little bit crap now. But that's pretty much it. Like, you just, at that point, you don't really care. Some set pieces on this are just humongous. Like when the police car crashes, it's brilliant. It's pure like great 80s action cinema. But I love it when the police are there and they're realising what's going on around them, and he's like, Jesus, Frank, that's Dave Mars. He plays centre every year. Like, what's that on him? Like, what are them fucking things? Just winding the window up and just like, can we go now, please? Really
freaking out.
That's exactly what you'd be like. Yeah, like, what the fuck's going on? And I love that element of it. I love when it kind of cuts to outside, or when he gets out the car, so we're going to have to run for it. 1, 2, 3, and then when they get out of the car and you see it, like, imagine if it's almost like Pottersville, but with gremlins in it.
Yeah.
It's just there's absolute pandemonium everywhere. Just from that minute that you know, as soon as Stripe goes into that pool in the YMCA, and you're like, shit. But they have so much fun with that shot. There's just so much smoke, green lights.
The
camera
green
pans
lights,
back
green and red lights.
great.
The way he's holding his nose as well when he dives in. I love that. That's a lovely touch.
It's just like sinking down to the bottom, just like gleeful, wonderful.
I really like that part where the priest goes to mail a letter, and it's like yum yum, and then it spits back out, and then he's like perplexed. He doesn't know what's happening, and then somebody comes to the mailbox, and the priest says, "Oh, hello, Anderson. You want to mail something, do you?" And he's like, "Go ahead, go on then. See what happens." What a dick!
Brilliant. He'd say it's a last-minute gift. It's Christmas Eve. It's about 6 o'clock.
It's not going to get there.
Really last minute, that.
So out of all the carnage, out of all the madness, have you got a favourite pocket of action that's happening here?
Well, my favourite bit is the one that kind of kicks it all off, really, which is the attack on the Footerman's house. I love that contrast you have between Murray and his wife, because she is so nice and he's so grumpy. You know, he's sitting there, he's bitching about the TV. Oh, should have got a Zenith. You know, he's looking for the remote, and she's just like, "You've got the thingy." You know, it's completely going over her head how horrible he is to her. She just thinks it's hilarious. But it's when, obviously, the engine starts up and you get that shot of her in the house, like a mouthful of crisps, like looking around like, what's that? And when they burst out and they're laughing their heads off driving that bulldozer, and it's when the music kicks in. That Gremlins theme is a fantastic bit of music, and this is the first bit where it properly kicks in.
They're chanting away.
Yeah, they're chanting away. They're having an absolute blast. But again, it's horrible, but it's also hilarious.
It is. It's amazing. What about you, Westy?
Again, horrible but hilarious. More hilarious than horrible, though. It's the demise of the horrible, disgusting Mrs. Deagle. She's a bitch, and I hate her, and she goes in the best way possible. That this is better than I could have imagined it to be. It's just, you get them singing carols. She just goes out. She doesn't know what the fuck's going on. She's got 3 deadlocks on her door. They've messed with her stairmaster, or whatever the fuck you call it. And when she goes up them stairs, that's some speed, that. Whoever was on the stunts for that, she is going. And that's a practical effect. That's something else.
Yeah.
We mentioned Dante's comedy timing before. That cut to outside, and that bit of sound design where you still hear it just, and that exit from that window. Piss myself every single time. It's just perfect. Our legs are kicking. I just flying through. Lands in front. You just see her slippers are still on. That's all you see. Man, I could watch that on repeat if ever I'm feeling a little bit down. Yeah. Just them 2 minutes.
She's got names for all of her cats. Have you any idea what those names are?
They are based on currency, aren't they?
They're all based on currency. So one's called Dollar Bill, one's called Peso, one's called Drachma. It's ridiculous. She's money hungry.
Obsessed with Wedge. That's what happens. You end up flying out the window.
And she's got like a real estate business, and she's got that sign outside, Mrs. Deagle's Real Estate, or Deagle's Real Estate. Yeah. Opening hours, 10:30 to 11:15, Monday to Friday.
That's a great throwaway joke, that, isn't it?
Genius.
Yeah. She's a piece of shit.
I'm going to go for the scene in Dory's Tavern, where Kate is serving up drinks, and there's absolute pandemonium. When I rewatched this, I just couldn't believe this scene existed.
Oh, no.
It's amazing.
It is.
They're having a whale of a time.
Someone flashing in the corner.
The flash is really weird, but they have an amazing time getting really pissed, hanging from the ceiling, singing songs. And I love the little pockets of action going on. The card game's amazing. One of them gets shot by the other, and the rest start laughing.
Stripe shoots have done it over cards.
No solidarity among them. It's brilliant. They don't care if the others get killed. It's still funny.
And it's the late night jazz segment that's really, really amazing. Like the lights go down from nowhere, and then one of them does like hand puppetry.
That's so weird. That's the weirdest thing I've ever seen.
Really bizarre. And then there's like that homage to Flashdance in there.
Yeah.
The bit that I really, really love is where one of them's caught on the ceiling fan, and he's spinning round and round and round, and it cuts to one of the other gremlins with his head just following the fan round, and then flies off. It's hilarious. And then really menacing right at the end. There's a one with a gun who's going to just like straight up murder Kate.
Yeah, with a balaclava
if she didn't
on.
duck out the way. Yeah. Really terrifying.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah.
So funny. So much fun.
Yeah.
So with the town in chaos and after a few drinks at Dory's, there's only one place left to go for the Gremlins.
Oh, yeah.
The crew.
Look at some of the crew work on Gremlins. It was written by 80s stalwart Chris Columbus, who also wrote The Goonies, directed Adventures in Babysitting, Home Alone, Mrs. Doubtfire, a few Harry Potter films in there as well, very successful.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of the screenplay on Gremlins, Matt?
I do sometimes find it hard to believe that it has come from Columbus, considering how like dark it is and how cynical it is, because there's nothing really else he's done that suggests that, and which does make me think we're kind of touching it. Did Dante have a hand in writing it? I do know that Columbus didn't actually think this would get made at all, and he was inspired because one night in his apartment he could hear mice scurrying around, and that kind of sparked this idea, and he took it from there, and he thought it was just going to be a writing sample to show what he was capable of, but Spielberg read it and said it was the most original thing he'd read in years.
That's right, yeah. He said at night what sounded like a platoon of mice would come out, and to hear them skittering around in the blackness was really, really creepy.
Yeah, and what it reads like to me, it's like a short story you would get in something like Fangoria or some kind of fantasy magazines, almost something you'd read around like a campfire, like the Christmas present that went wrong. I think what it does, it just builds a really solid base from those three rules, and that voiceover at the beginning, that's so integral. That tells you the story right, and everything we're going to build comes from there. And because that base is so solid, it doesn't overextend itself. It doesn't have them, try to take over an entire city. It doesn't have, ridiculous set pieces like the army trying to roll into town and have big set pieces. It just keeps everything grounded for me. So even when it does start a stream plausibility, we've talked about things like the Gremlins are out there running around through snow, so I on to kind of spawn and one more. You don't really care that much because the screenplay's been so solid up to now. You're just with it.
Yeah.
So I think, it's really good bit of writing from Columbus.
Yeah, I do have a problem with those things, not on initial viewing, but just watching it again and again for this episode. It does start to stick in a bit, that the rules that are set up in the film, they're quite loose to begin with, but the film doesn't necessarily follow them. Like, Mogwai can't get wet, but he's stripes rolling around in the snow. They're at Dory's Tavern, and they're drinking as much booze as possible. But that's wet.
Yeah.
Surely something
and it's
should
all
be
over
happening
the face
there.
as well.
Exactly.
Splattering on each other.
Also, they're smoking cigarettes in Dory's Tavern, but then when Kate goes to light one of them freaks out. Well, how did it get lit in the first place then?
Yeah.
So some of these do start to get under the skin a little bit on repeat viewings. Like you said, Matt, I am willing to let that slide because you just bought into this concept.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that this would have been a very, very different beast on the first write, or the one that Spielberg was bought into, if I'm completely honest. I think all of them things would have made sense. I think he would have watched what he was doing. I don't really think it was all in the screenplay. I think it was a concept that was bought. And I think the concept's great. And the concept, it sounds very much like a Roald Dahl kind of thing. I mean, I know he coined the term gremlin anyway. So it's from that kind of fantastical background. Deep down, I think Columbus wrote this as like a horror film, as a straight-out horror film. And I think when Spielberg got his hands on it, he made it more family-orientated. He started to put a lighter spin on it. And then Dante comes on board, and then it's a lighter spin again, and it's more dark humour. And it's very much, for me, from a writing point of view, a team effort.
I get that, definitely.
It's more like a pick and mix. And he just kind of put certain things in, and then Spielberg and Dante have added and taken away, which is why it doesn't really make much sense. But from a character point of view, from the stuff that there's in the original script, you know that the whole violent sequence in the kitchen, from Kate's monologue, that's in the original script, the original ideas, the haunting of Chinatown, and these rules that you've got, these things will destroy you, there's a real deep undertone, and I think that's what the original was. But then it was, candy floss added, and it was fluffed up a little bit by Spielberg, and then it was just fluffed up a little bit again by Dante. So from a writing point of view, I think it's very much a team effort.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one, Westy, certainly. I really do love the concept of the film, and I think that's come from Chris Columbus, of course. I'm sure the majority of the lines and the scenarios have as well, but I think that Spielberg and certainly Dante have had an influence on those as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Certainly the dialogue, I think it's got a really great, barbed wit. There's some really dark lines of dialogue we'll go back to Kate. She says, while most people who are opening presents, they're at home opening their wrists.
Yeah.
So much darkness in that line.
Yeah.
Best line in the film for me. It certainly represents some of the resentment felt towards Christmas by some people. I think people will be able to relate to that now. I really like that.
Yeah.
Westy, you mentioned earlier that Gremlin term first originated from Roald Dahl in his book Gremlin Law, which was about elves who caused damage to Royal Air Force planes during World War II. And this is obviously what Mr. Futterman's referring to when he's talking about gremlins and the machinery.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yum, yum.
Next on the crew list, Chris Wallace. The effects work on Gremlins made possible by the great man, done it the old-fashioned way with the majority of the Gremlins controlled by puppetry. Amazing when you look at the finished article, really.
Yeah,
what do you think of the Gremlin effects, Westy?
I love them. I love the evil Gremlins are far, far more accessible for me in a case of just a design point of view. They're just more interesting.
Yeah, the design's amazing.
Yeah.
It's just, how do you come up with that? It's terrifying, but at the same time, you can't really look away from it. And you know, they've got an ability, like they're capable of so many things. Like the limbs are just the right length, and the ears are just the right length for them just to kind of like scuttle around and fit into places, but they're not too small so that they're annoying and jumping on you and biting you, like them shit little dinosaurs in the Lost World, where they just kind of like run after the girl and nip at her. Like they've got like a substance to them. They're substantial enough to destroy really funnily. And I think that's really good from a design point of view. But he's always done it old school, hasn't he? I mean, come on, from the melting faces in Raiders to like The Fly to House 2, Naked Lunch, Return of the Jedi character creation as well. Like, he's got some imagination.
Oh, amazing. Matt, what about you?
I think the key thing to any special effect, and whether it's practical or CGI, it's not just about believability, it's about creating character. So like you look at like the original King Kong, the dinosaurs from Jurassic Park, the apes in the new Planet of the Apes films. They're not just believable, you believe them as characters. And I think that's one of the really impressive things that Wallace does here with those Gremlins. Well, like with Gizmo, you feel like every emotion that Gizmo's going through, when he's worried, when he's scared, when he's happy. And it's the same with those Gremlins. Like, I generally don't know how many models they created for this film, because every time you see one, it feels really individual from the ones you've just seen or the ones it's next to, even if he's maybe using, I don't know, 5 like over and over again. And I think that's like testament to how good his work is in creating them. He just fills them with so much character. But so much of the brilliance of this film though comes down to like how simple everything is. Like when the cocoons crack open, it's just a smoke machine and some lights and shadow, and it's really, really effective. Mentioned it earlier, but when Stripe jumps into the swimming pool, again, just a smoke machine, lights, and getting the water to bubble up. But it looks really, really great. The Gremlins themselves, they are just fantastic. But I do know that they were so expensive that each night when the cast and crew left the lot, everybody had to have their car checked by security to make sure no one was trying to like smuggle any of them out to go and show them off to like the folks back home or whatever. Because obviously they must have cost an absolute bomb to make, but the money's up there because they look amazing.
Yeah, I think they're about six grand each or something. I know they made 5 Gizmos.
Right.
Not all of them worked. There was always a problem with each and every one of them, which is why it was Chris Waller's idea to put Gizmo on the dartboard and have them throwing darts at it, because they're like just pissed off with that puppet because it didn't work as well as it should.
Get the frustration out.
It was his idea.
They drew a list of like horrible things to do to Gizmo, just because it caused them so much heartache, breaking down all the time, all these little moving parts breaking down all the time. There was instances where the cast and crew fell asleep because Gizmo took that long to repair.
Fucking hell.
Little knobhead.
Little bastard. I think the effects work's absolutely amazing. Gremlins, Gizmo, perfectly integrated into the film. There is only a couple of examples that I can think of where it doesn't really fit and it feels a little bit fake. You mentioned it, that stop motion when they come marauding out of the darkness. There's hundreds of them. Yeah. It's clear that it's scale models. But it's 1984, you know, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
I think the most impressive is at Dory's Tavern when there's just loads of them.
Yeah.
And it feels as though they're alive. And you mentioned it, Matt, but the different expressions on Gizmo's face, whether he's happy or sad or frightened, I don't know how they've done that, but they've done it perfectly. I just look at his face and I know what he's feeling.
Yeah, it's great.
Fantastic stuff. Chris Wallace was first given the script for Gremlins and he said, I'd written one word on the front cover of the screenplay and that was simply, ha. He said, I don't think it could be done. The technology didn't exist. Don't have a shop. I don't have a crew. There's no way I'll do it. But I was desperate for money, so I took the job.
Oh, nice. I nailed it as well.
Yeah.
Before it was agreed that it was puppetry would be the way forward for the Gremlins, stop motion animation, and also monkeys in Gremlin outfits were tried out. I mean, I don't know what they were thinking, but that would have just looked ridiculous. A monkey in a Gremlin face.
Yeah, did you hear about it when he was in Joe Dante's office and they tried it on? They tried to put a mask on it and it went absolutely mental and trashed the whole office. And then Dante was like,
Yeah.
Puppets then?
Yeah. Trashed the office and defecated everywhere and then ran out.
Sounds like a gremlin.
So puppets
Perfect,
then. There are a number of voice artists on board for Gremlins. Frank Welker voiced Spike and suggested Howie Mandel for the voice of Gizmo. Mandel, now known to modern audiences as the host of US TV show Deal or No Deal, and also as a judge on America's Got Talent. Mandel didn't provide the vocals for Gizmo when he sings, that little ditty that he sings. Jerry Goldsmith did the score for the film, and he hired a 13-year-old girl who was a member of his synagogue to sing. Also, Michael Winslow, who you might know as Jones from Police Academy. Obviously, he does all the sound effects in Police Academy.
Yeah.
He's involved in there as well. Of course, he did.
Of course he did.
All over the voice work in the 80s. Really talented crew work on Gremlins. Chris Wallace deserves the lion's share of praise, but it's a great concept by Chris Columbus, not forgetting the editing by Tina Hirsch and Jerry Goldsmith, who provided the unforgettable Gremlins theme.
Yep.
Oh, yes.
The end.
Final act of Gremlins. Kate and Billy survey the destruction caused by the Gremlins, and Kate reveals why she dislikes the holiday season with a chilling glimpse into her tragic past. They find the Gremlins settled in the local cinema to watch a Disney classic, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and they're loving it. Westy, what do you think of this thing?
I think it's very convenient, isn't it? How they're all just in one place.
How do they know how to put the projector on?
Yeah, let's just wrap this up now, shall we? There's loads of popcorn, there's none left. Stripe leaves, we know what's going to happen. But why Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs? Was there something...
Well, Joe Dante said we had to use Snow White. He said, first of all, it's got dwarfs in it, which is nice because they're small and they sing. But he said it's also nice because what Snow White means to people, it's such a sweet, nice, wonderful movie, and the Gremlins are just so awful. The fact that they can watch Snow White and get such a kick out of it is very sunny. You love the contrast of it.
Yeah, that's Joe Dante all over, isn't it, really? Let's go together
Yeah,
and watch
of course
Snow
it
White.
is.
Totally.
And they bring it up again in the sequel as well. Like, they just want to watch Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. In the middle of the still running gag years later. I like the fact that they're all in the cinema. It reminds me of why I stopped going to the cinema for a while before lockdown, because that's kind of what it turned into. People just fucking talking.
Loads of Gremlins there, eating popcorn.
Just bunch of bastards, not appreciate the film. But after the tavern, I think it wraps itself up, and you kind of just think, right, okay, I've had enough of these now. Let's just start moving towards some kind of conclusion. And I think it does work. It does work from that point of view, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, as an ex-cinema worker, I do feel very traumatised by the scene. Just the amount of crap you'd be left to clean up afterwards. Absolutely unreal. It's basically if you did let a bunch of 7 and 8-year-old kids run riot in the cinema with no adult supervision whatsoever, and it's just more chaos. And it's another scene where it's all about the details. Like, there's a gremlin down the front who's wearing the sheriff's hat.
Yeah. And Mickey Mouse ears.
Yeah, the Mickey Mouse ears, one with the popcorn bags on his ears, one that's got the fireman's helmet. And there's no way you'd get away with this scene today, like with a Disney film.
No
Disney.
way.
No way would Disney let you do that. It's such a massive...
Not at all. With a cherished classic.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't know why it would be, but it does feel like a big fuck you to Disney, even though it probably wasn't, but that's what it kind of feels like.
Yeah.
It's that contrast between, like, such an innocent film and the Gremlins totally getting into it.
They love it.
They love it, and I think this scene is hilarious. For me, this scene just takes me back to being a kid again. I absolutely love it. And then it does, again, that Dante thing. It's really funny. But then that scene where they've spotted Billy and Kate and they're coming for them through the screen, that's really horrific.
That's a really, really terrifying image when they're silhouetted against the cinema screen.
And that's just so typical of the film, the way it's able to just spin from one to the other. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah,
do you guys not think as well, with this contrast that Dante's trying to portray, that it's not very much Warner Brothers against Disney or Looney Tunes against the Disney vibe? How it's got that real schmaltzy Disney feel, and Gremlins feels more Warner Brothers and feels more like, Bugs Bunny or Sylvester and Tweety, and it's got that
Yeah,
that real
certainly.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
contrast between the two. I think that might be a reason as well.
Yeah. I know it's not the most complex of songs, but I don't know how the Gremlins know the lyrics to Hi Ho immediately. As soon as it fires up, they're singing along. I mean, they've just been born, so I don't know what's going on here.
They've just been born by a Mogwai getting water poured on it, and they've popped out of its back, and he's jumped into a swimming pool and then birthed more. They've just cut the brakes of a police car, fucked up some traffic lights. They've just fucked up the whole town, and they've just got pissed.
They've
in
just
the smoking
killed
cabs,
people.
and they've killed people. And you're wondering how they know the lyrics to Hi Ho.
To be fair, they pick up the Christmas carols really easily when they're
They
outside
do,
Eagles,
they do.
you know, so they'll obviously read music really
Got
well.
them written down.
Yeah, true.
I really love that Christmas Carol bit because they've all got like hats on and earmuffs. Where did they get them from?
Yeah. All fit perfectly as well.
They've killed the Christmas carolers from the earlier sequence, haven't they? Because they're wearing the same kit.
Right,
Yeah.
no, lovely. Well, not lovely, but, you know.
Oh, lovely.
Oh, look, dead.
Death to the
Dead
carol
children.
singers. Like it's all the way through, but these Gremlins are just like eating machines.
Yeah.
Nothing's filling them up. Everything's yum yum. Whether it's a test tube or an
Yeah.
apple or a letter or popcorn or anything like that. And when Stripe's at the popcorn machine and there's none left, he's gutted.
Yeah.
He's absolutely devastated that they're out of popcorn, and then just
Furious.
makes it out of there over to the department store.
Amazing how they throw the apple away as well. Like, this is good for you. Oh, fuck that. Throw the apple back. They just want absolute shit.
Yeah, brilliant. That big explosion from the cinema, Phoebe Cates said, it singed her eyebrows and it shattered windows on a university building a mile away.
Wow.
I mean, it looks really impressive. It's a really good set piece. So with the cinema up in flames, Kate and Billy think they've saved the day. That is until they see Stripe in the department store over the road. So the final showdown, Westy, what do you think of this?
There's loads of 80s films that have this, like, department store vibe, and they always end up in the sports section, and there's always cool stuff like baseball bats and chainsaws, and it's always so much,
Saws.
always so much fun. But this is the bit for me where Billy's just crap. He's just
He's a wimp, isn't he?
crap. He is rubbish at every turn. Like, he's outfoxed by Stripe every single time. And to be honest, if it wasn't for Gizmo driving his little Barbie car, Billy would be absolutely fucked. Because Stripe's like, he's given birth almost immediately. He's just taking the piss out of him with a crossbow. You know, as a character, you want to kind of, you know, approach that a little bit stronger. Like, he sends her off to turn the lights on, which she does. She succeeds in her task. He fails at his.
Yeah.
But how shit is that chainsaw? It can't even cut a baseball bat in half. It takes ages.
I know. After about a minute.
Yeah, and it's a brand new chainsaw as well, but still really funny. I love the Gizmo driving, and that goes back to that Clark Gable film he was watching.
Oh, it's great.
And
That
you
close-up
hear-
of his face when his eyes are all darting about all over
you
the
hear the
place.
dialogue from the film, like, it takes a great day. That's just there in the background, and he's absolutely loving it. And I like the fact that Stripe comes from behind a soft ET, like cuddly ET. And you got Sylvester to one side and Bugs Bunny to the other, which is the Warner Brothers and Spielberg tie-in again.
Oh, nice.
But the thing, another Shining influence is when Stripe is on that trike, which is pretty similar to Danny in The Shining when he just pedals away from it, which is a red trike, which is again a nod to The Shining. So I think there's a few more in there.
Nice.
And Stripe's death is both, I mean, you feel sorry for him, and it's absolutely disgusting. Disgusting. That was filled with liquid nitrogen, that fountain, and the puppeteer was in protective clothing, but that actually melted the puppet. It's horrible.
Yeah, it looks great. It reminds me of like the final sequence in Evil Dead.
Yeah.
Where the plasticine models, like stop motion animation, started like disintegrate.
It's really well.
Fantastic
It's
stuff.
like Raiders melting faces as well. It's very similar to that.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
very similar to Naked Lunch, which he did as well, I think. It keeps going as well, doesn't it? Like, it doesn't stop.
Yeah,
You've
it
got
does.
that kind of-
It's the sound design as well. I really love that sound design when it starts to it jumps out of the thing, and then it starts to dissolve, and there's that like weird like wow in the sound design. Brilliant.
terrifying stuff. Great sequence, though.
What about you, Matt?
I love it. I think the pacing to it is really, really good. How it's in the cutting, like Billy just creeping around the department store with Rand like racing back. To be fair, he doesn't even know he's racing back far, really, does he?
No.
no,
No,
he's
not
just
at all.
speeding home for his Christmas dinner. He thinks just has no idea the amount of shit he's left behind.
I know.
Yeah.
That's really funny. But like all the stuff in the department store, I think it works really well, and I think like the editing really helps sell it. So like when Stripe throws that saw blade, that really clangs into the wall.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
really,
it does.
Really feels like
Burrows in.
yeah, like he threw that at some force, and that's obviously because of the editing. And I think it does a really good job of making it. I mean, part of it is down to Billy's general crapness, but it does.
Oh, shit, isn't he?
It does help you convince that actually there is genuine peril here, like with a human against a puppet. Mm-hmm. But there's some lovely details in there. I love it when Stripe just pops up on the multiple TVs.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
Yeah.
That's great. Love that. I do know in like the kind of garden store part of it, there's a Triffid in there from the 60s. They made a version of Day of the Triffids.
Day of the Triffids,
Which
right,
obviously
yeah.
Dante would have been a huge fan of. That's absolutely
Because
his
Dante
kind
is
of
like
thing.
a huge fan of like old school horror movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, so apparently there's a Triffid in there if you keep
Nice.
guys open for it. But yeah, just the way it builds up, and it does bring all those characters back in together, so Kate gets something to do. Obviously Gizmo saves the day, Ron turns up with Barney. I think it brings it all together really, really well. And you mentioned there like that final bit of Stripe just melting away. Like you mentioned, like what you think it looks like. I always think it reminds me of if you've seen the first Dracula film that Hammer made, the way that Christopher Lee gets like vaporized, and that he kind of melts away. And again, we're talking about stuff that Dante would have been into. He would absolutely be a massive Hammer horror fan.
Definitely. I really like what feels like the dog is set up to save the day. It jumps out of Rand's car and into the department store.
Yeah.
But then just gets freaked out by everything. That you mentioned it, Westy, but that moment where it jumps up when Gizmo goes flying past is fucking hilarious.
It's hilarious. I would imagine totally unintentional as well. It's really unfair.
Yeah, it's obviously legit. The dog's obviously totally freaked out by the fact that there's a Mogwai running around. What the fuck is this?
I think the dog's reaction all the way through the film should have been the human reactions all the way through the film. It's the only one with any fucking sense. It's like, what the fuck's this?
Keep that away from me.
In the original ending, it was Billy who lifts the blinds to kill Stripe, but Spielberg changed it so that Gizmo does it and he's the hero. Just further pouring misery on the fact that Billy's just inept in this situation.
Massively.
But it's the taunting Stripe. Like, he's on the TV.
Yeah.
He's going crazy, throwing things off him. He's got him backed into a corner, shooting arrows at him.
Yeah.
Billy's about 10 times the size of him. Just kick him.
Yeah, exactly.
Get rid of
just
him.
run at him and punch him in the face. Like, easy stuff. Did Gallagher not know about that ending until he saw the cut? And then he was sitting with Joe Dante, and Joe Dante just said, "Whose idea do you think that was?" And he said, "Well, I'm not going to say anything, so I'd like to work for him again one day." It's obviously Spielberg cutting him out at the last minute. He's like sitting there to watch it. Here we go. Here's my big moment. I've been really crap, but I get to kill the bad guy. And now you don't. Oh, for fuck's sake.
One of the part of the effects that I really like in this film, and it's only used 2 times, it's the beginning and the end, is the use of matte paintings. I just love that matte painting at the end with Mr. Wing walking off. I just think that looks fantastic.
With that voiceover as well.
Yeah, with that voiceover, which is obviously kind of teasing you for a potential sequel.
Yeah.
But I know that when they were putting it together, there was a technical glitch, and Mr. Wing actually disappeared from the painting at one point, and they were unsure as to whether or not to leave that in, to like leave it as a kind of like a little mystical twist at the end. And obviously they've left it as it should have been. I don't know if that would have been a touch too far, maybe.
It would have been a touch too far. Like
definitely would
far
have been
too much
ridiculous.
too late in the film. Whole new plot twist. Finished. You know what I love about this ending is how normal the Peltzer family is after this absolute horrendous tragedy that's befell the whole town. I think you'd like some chicken soup. Like, people have died here. Just, don't chew on that. Don't chew on that.
Yeah.
And it's that speech that Wing gives about this is your society, does this to nature. And I think it's a really strong point to hit home at the end. Like, they're exploring some really deep things here. The Western society and as a whole really doesn't respect or care about values or traditions or rules. That's what the whole film's about. If you start respecting values and traditions and rules, then things go a little bit smoother. If you don't, then it ends up in this absolute nightmare. So I think that just that one line is huge. Yeah,
and I think Mr. Wing knows the truth. He says that maybe one day you will be able to look after him. You'll be able to learn to look after him. He knows that that's never going to happen.
He's saying that directly to Billy, though, who's probably got the most compassion out of everyone and probably the most intelligence.
He's got compassion, but he's still stupid. Can't defend himself.
You're easy 6'2" with a baseball bat. Like, fucking grow up.
That is definitely the subtext of what he was saying to me.
Yeah, that is,
Exactly.
100%. I read that as well. Well, all's well that ends well. We're going to leave it up to the great man, Rand Peltzer, to take us out with some sage advice.
Reception and awards.
Gremlins is a Christmas movie. I think we've established that already.
Is it?
Yes, we have.
It was planned for a Christmas release, but Warner's hurried production and put it out in the summer because they didn't have a big movie to go toe-to-toe with the likes of Indiana Jones, The Temple of Doom, Ghostbusters. In fact, Gremlins was released on the same day as Ghostbusters as well. An amazing bang bang. Can you imagine that weekend at the flicks?
That'd be amazing
Absolutely.
now, wouldn't it?
It did better in New York, though, didn't it, Gremlins? Because of all the disruptions that Ghostbusters caused filming in New York.
That's
shutting
right.
The streets down, so everyone went to see Gremlins
right.
instead.
Yeah.
Fuck you, guys. Who are you going to call? Gremlins.
On an $11 million budget, it returned a very handsome $212.9 million. Today's money, that would be roughly $533 million. Pretty good.
Pretty good.
It was the fourth highest grossing film of the year behind Beverly Hills Cop, Ghostbusters and Temple of Doom. Joe Dante summarised this simply by saying, "I still have no idea why the picture was successful." And I don't either. I don't know why audiences bought this. It's confused tone.
Shouldn't have, really, should they?
It was a hit at the Saturn Awards in 1985. It picked up statues for Best Horror Film, Best Director, Best Supporting Actress, Best Music and Best Special Effects. Critical reception at the time was a little mixed. Leonard Maltin said that the film is negated by too vivid violence and mayhem.
It's an easy criticism, isn't it?
Not vivid enough.
Actually, it was 2 out of 4 his review, and in a little tongue-in-cheek joke, he shows up in Gremlins 2
Oh, he
saying
does,
how
yes.
putrid it was and stuff like that.
That's
Yeah.
right, he does. I forgot about
Nice
that.
little touch.
Yeah.
Variety said the humans are little more than dress extras for the mechanics, and Gene Siskel, on the positive side, said a wickedly funny and slightly sick ride. Summed it
Positive
up
from
beautifully.
Siskel.
Yeah,
Lovely.
pretty much.
Wow.
No,
Didn't give anyone's address away this time.
no,
Gizmo lives there.
that's a reference to a Patreon podcast that we did a couple of weeks ago. You're missing out on that one, so sign up.
Yeah,
That's what
definitely.
you're saying, Westy, yeah?
I think so, yeah.
From a contemporary critical standpoint, Gremlins has an 85% rating on Rotten Tomatoes and a score of 7.3 out of 10 on IMDb. Unexpected success and welcome praise for Gremlins, richly deserved in our opinion.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Sequels and influence.
The success of Gremlins led to a number of horror comedy creature features in the 80s, including things like Troll, Ghoulies and Critters. Also, 90s Scottish rock band Mogwai took their name from the film as well. Those fellas are big fans. 6 years after the film's release, we got a sequel, Gremlins 2, The New Batch. Released in 1990, it's got a 71% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, 6.4 on IMDb. Directed again by Joe Dante, who said that he prefers the sequel to the original. Dante is a fan. Are you fellas?
I do have what was a slightly traumatic story at the time when it came out. 'Cause
lovely.
I was well,
Lovely, like.
because I was so obsessed with the first one. I was just unbelievably excited for the sequel. And this was in the days where you couldn't pre-book your tickets. You had to turn up on the day for the screening and
God.
actually
Queue
watch it
outside.
and
See
queue
what's going
outside. And the local cinema near me, it just went queuing down the street in the piss and rain. And I was with me mum. She said she would take us. We got to the front and she looked up and she went, "Oh, is this a 12?" And the woman behind the counter went, "Yeah." She went, "Oh, he's 10, he can't go in."
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
What are you thinking? She wasn't going to ask my age. I was so gutted.
That's traumatic.
It is, it's my version of Kate's story, I think.
Yeah, that explains a lot.
Yeah, it does. But I must have moaned about it for ages because, like, a couple of months later, my sister's boyfriend managed to get hold of, like, a pirated copy of it, basically, and he brought it
okay.
around just for us. There was a happy ending to it eventually.
Okay.
And as a film, I do really like it. I like the kind of spoofy nature of it. I like a lot of the meta humour that's in there. I think the designs for the new Gremlins are brilliant. That variety they've got in there, I think, is incredible. On the negative side, though, because they throw so much at it, it does feel a little messy as a film.
It is, yeah.
You definitely don't have the tightness of the original. and I don't think it's as dark as the original either.
It's not, no.
So I would have to differ from Joe Dante's opinion, but I still really like it.
Westy, do you like it?
I do like it, and I think this is probably one of the only sequels that I could argue is as good, not better, not worse than the first one. It's just on a par.
Okay.
It's a different take, but it's still just as good. And I know what Matt's saying, it is a little bit disjointed, it is a bit all over there, but it's got some really wonderful bits in it. The same as the first one, it's got some really wonderful. But Christopher Lee in this is mind-bendingly good.
Excellent.
He hams it right up.
Excellent.
Perfect. Gizmo as Rambo, brilliant. You've got like the Bat Gremlin, you've got the Spider Gremlin.
Awesome, that.
And I think that's what makes it better, because they don't try to be something from the first one, and it becomes incredibly meta, especially in the middle. You got that appearance from Hulk Hogan where he's kind of like interrupting the whole film.
Ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. I mean, if you watch it again, you just think, Jesus. But in the cinema, that's what this was made for. It was made for the theatre audience, and that's what I love about that. But there's just as much fun going on here as there is in the first one.
Yeah, I've recently rewatched it and I was a little bit disappointed. I was expecting, because I knew it had a positive reception, I was expecting it to be as good. It fell short for me. I thought it was just a little bit too slapstick.
Right.
And I think it's thick and fast with gags, which I don't think land anywhere near as effectively as the first one.
Right.
I do think there are definitely far too many gremlins in it this time around.
Right.
They should have taken some out. It's really effective, but the gremlins, the disfigurement of them and all that kind of stuff really made my skin crawl in this. I was watching it, I felt itchy watching it.
Right.
Awful.
See, I quite like that.
But decent. Christopher Lee, you can't go wrong, can you?
No.
Oh, no, it's great.
There has been talk of a third instalment for quite some time. It's one of those that's been off and on forever. Chris Columbus said in 2012 that it was impossible to recreate it in a CGI environment, and it would inevitably lose its charm. But 5 years later, he'd written a script and has said it was twisted and dark, something that he was really proud of. Then a couple of years ago, he said the third instalment would be a straight reboot.
Right.
The last report saying that it was under development at Warner's, so it is listed on IMDb, but just no date of when it's going to come out or what it is actually going to be. Another question from one of our patrons, this time Dean Jones. He says there's been talk of Gremlins 3 since forever. Is this something that we would look forward to, or is it best left alone? He enjoyed the spoofy tone of the second one. So Westy, you want to see a third Gremlins?
I think it would be great. You can't really go wrong, can you? I mean, just the more of the same slapstick, dark humour with these little things causing as much damage as possible to as many different things as possible. I think if you update it to the culture we're in today and the cliches that we're in today, I think you've got an absolute smorgasbord of stuff to explore. I think it could be really, really fun. I'd love to see what they would do with it. I did hear there was a series coming out next year, which is Gremlins Secrets of the Mogwai.
Yeah,
that's right.
That's animated, isn't it?
Yeah,
it is. It's a prequel.
Which is a prequel which explores kind of the history of it and where Gizmo came from and that type of thing, which would be quite interesting. But I would love to see Spielberg, Dante, Columbus, everyone back together and just,
Callaghan.
Straight
back in there.
Well, and just see, Phoebe Cates maybe, Callaghan. Well, we'll see. Maybe a cameo role.
Yeah, what about you, Matt?
Yeah, I agree, because fundamentally it's not a film that's dependent on any one particular character that, you'd have to worry about them getting the character right. There's no particular mythology you'd have to worry about, are they going to mess up?
Yeah. Well, they don't care about that in the first one.
Well, exactly, yeah, there's barely any rules that they stick to. So, fundamentally, you could take it in so many different directions. You could have them running loose in a theme park or something like that, or across Disneyland.
Beverly Hills Cop 3.
If you have these running riot in a film studio, where they're trying to do different films, and you've got cameos from loads of big time actors, I think it would be so much fun.
I think the key thing for me would be, though, getting that tone right. It has to have that same spirit, that same kind of sense of anarchy and chaos. If they brought it back and it was softened, it just wouldn't work at all.
Yeah.
I think that's my concern as well. I just don't know how this would be adapted for a modern audience. I don't think it would be as uncompromising. I don't think it would have the bite of the original. I'm not crying out for a Gremlins 3, to be honest.
No, I'm not.
It would have to be something really shocking and at the same time funny, which I guess the time might have passed. I think 1984 was probably the perfect time to do that.
Yeah, particularly those creative guys, Chris Columbus, Joe Dante, Steven Spielberg. It's 35 years later, 36, 37 years later. I just don't know if they'll be in the right place.
No.
To be able to bring that spirit to it.
Yeah, it'd be the likes of like J.J. Abrams and Edgar Wright. It'd be them kind of guys to get a hold of it and make something of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're unsure if a third instalment would hit the mark, but if you can't get enough of Gizmo and his Mogwai friends, you've got that animated series to look forward to next year.
Yep.
All the Right Movies ranking.
Like a wonderful present on Christmas Day, we're going to unwrap our final thoughts on Gremlins in our final segment of the podcast. Matt, could you give us your summary and score for Gremlins?
Gremlins feels like a film that has just been tailor-made for me. The sense of humour in the film is exactly the kind of stuff I find really funny. The effects work is incredible. It's exactly the kind of practical effects work as well that I just really, really love. But it's more than that. I love the story behind it. I think there's some incredible set pieces in here. There are some really good performances in here. There's some fantastic bits of dialogue sprinkled throughout, and the whole thing still feels very, very unique. And it also feels timeless. You know, this is a film that's beloved by our generation, and I know I've passed it on to the next generation when I've introduced it to my son, and I know he loves it just as much as I do. There are, you know, some things to criticise about it. The kind of 3 rules at the beginning get thrown out of the window pretty quickly.
Immediately.
As we've discussed, Billy is not the most heroic central figure you could hope for in a film like this.
No.
But these are criticisms where, to me, I don't care that much because the film as a whole, I just find so incredibly entertaining from beginning to end. It's become a very personal film for me. It is one that I do hold very dear to me. It is in my list of all-time favourites. So for me, yes, it has its flaws, but I don't care. So it's a 10.
Wow.
All right.
Surprises every episode, Matt.
I'll try my best.
What about you, Westy?
Okay, the sentimentality isn't attached to this for me. I was checking out different films. I'd seen this one and it kind of just appeared and disappeared. I enjoyed it. Didn't immediately love it when I first saw it. But again, I never revisited it. It wasn't part of my, routine as a Christmas film, or it didn't sit as something that I would revisit and be excited to revisit. If it was on, I would watch it. It didn't tick all the boxes with me as it does with Matt. But having said that, it is incredibly fun. And there's not enough films out there that are this much fun, that have this much confidence in the craft. It's very Spielberg, it's very Dante, it's very Columbus, it's very good. So I'm going to give it 8 out of 10 for its fun factor and for the fact that it was made, and it was made to this level. It is great. Anything more than that, I would be robbing myself. So sorry, Matt, mate, but it's going to be an 8 from me.
Got to be true to yourself, Westy.
Yeah. It's fine. I'm not Joe Dante. I'm not going to take it personally.
That's all right.
If he's listening, though, he might take it personally.
Oh, he'd be furious.
Matt's fucking furious.
Like we've been saying throughout, I do get a load of joy from watching Gremlins, and it's genuinely laugh out loud funny.
Yeah.
Very, very good. The darkness in the film and the effects work is what I love the most about it. Just a joy to watch. Really solid performances, great concept and script, and Joe Dante firing on all cylinders. You mentioned the Matt, but it didn't have an impact on your score. But the holes in the rules from a screenplay point of view do annoy me a little bit. And I really can't get away with those Spielberg references throughout the film. Just unnecessary from a storytelling point of view. Just in my opinion, I just prefer if they weren't in there.
Right.
Spielberg's got his place in the production. He was instrumental in bringing it all together. Just feels for me a little out of place and unnecessary.
A little bit self-righteous as well, I guess.
Little bit.
Yeah.
So my score for the film is going to be a 9 out of 10. Straight down the middle.
Okay.
Nice. Our ever-growing Twitter fans have been voting on Gremlins as well, of course. A few highlights from the comments. Carl Rorschach 2022 at C4RL_2022 said, I was 12 and Gremlins was a 15 certificate here. I imagine he means in the UK. And we sneaked in to see it.
Oof, nice.
He also said that I managed to get the first video copy from Variety Video 2 when it came out. Variety Video, so evocative. Fantastic.
Got everything you need in there.
Love it. So he said, for me, it's always a 10 out of 10.
All right.
Very nice, Carl. Lovely. That Mason Boy said, the only bad thing about Gremlins is that there isn't more of them. Obviously, he's not a studio exec at Warner's.
No.
Does he mean actual Gremlins or Gremlins films? Because there's loads in the second one.
That's ambiguous. And he also said, and now have that theme tune in my head, which can be both good and irritating. I love it.
Yeah. It's been in my head for the last 4 hours.
Yeah. On a slightly negative point, Rob Crewis said, pure novelty film that honestly is not very good. A 7 is generous. How do you feel about that, Matt?
Furious.
So, on the Twitter poll, Gremlins averaged out with a score of...
Average, I would say an 8.
Yeah, I reckon on average it'll be I don't think many people rate it as highly as I do, so I'd say an 8 as well.
Oh, nailed it again. 8 out of 10.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well done. So, combining our votes and the score from Twitter, Gremlins has a total score of 35 out of 40.
Still strong.
Yeah, strong. Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Go to alltherightmovies.com/leaderboard to check out our ranking table of the films that were covered on the podcast. As we mentioned at the top, for more of the kind of world-class content that we provided on this episode, you can sign up to us on patreon.com/alltherightmovies. And talking about Patreon, we've got a really great movie community building over there, and a special shout out to the great guys and gals in our Directors Chair tier of patrons. They are Adam Cowie, Adam Yates, Kags Clough, Damien Lennox, Anna Randall, Andrea Barker Syed, Matt Lum, Graham Chater, Just Joe, Sheriff Ahmed, Kenny Morrison, Hilton Thompson, Jamie Russell, Robert Shearer, Mike Riley, George Anderson, Mr. Paul Devine, Anthony Hodgson, Darryl Clough, Caroline W., Dean Jones, James Fischera, John O'Howie, Justin Walsh, Karim Halliwell, and David Coates.
Whoa, ooh, nice.
Wonderful.
Expanding list, great guys.
Yep, lovely.
Yeah, they're lovely.
We're all off to Dory's Tavern for a good old Christmas sing-song.
Not me, it's a Christmas film.
For all show notes, credits, and references that we used in the production of the podcast, you can visit alltherightmovies.com/gremlins. Join us next time on All the Right Movies when John, Matt, P.I., Westy, and me are bringing you an extra special Christmas bonanza when we rank the top 10 alternative Christmas films.
Lovely.
We're going to have a Christmas party there, socially distanced, of course.
Of course, yep. Should have put this one in there.
It's got no place.
It's your opinion, man.
We did the top 10 Christmas films last year, and that's in our archive, so sign up to Patreon to listen to that as well.
Yeah.
As always, if you could subscribe, rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. We're obviously on Spotify, Google Podcasts, everywhere really. Our content doesn't stop at podcasts either. We've got a ton of really great articles going up on our website regularly, so go to alltherightmovies.com for some very insightful insights.
Oh yeah, some great stuff on there.
Our Facebook page is gathering momentum as well, but we want it to be bigger. It's full of great people and some great movie threads on there with us guys all in there as well. So search All the Right Movies on Facebook, join the group, join in the discussion.
Yeah, please do.
Yep.
As ever, on Twitter we are at right_movies, Instagram at all_the_right_movies, and our website is alltherightmovies.com. We will be back in 2 weeks, everybody. Hope you have a great December.
Yep, have fun, guys.
Bye, Billy.
What the fuck was that? To shit yourself?